the White House will take you there when it happens. Stay with CNN. Scale and speed of the violence in Israel and Gaza. U.S. and Israeli officials are characterizing the terror attacks carried out by Hamas as ISIS levels of evil. One of those massacres was at a rural community, or a kibbutz, in southern Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces say they discovered women, children, and elderly people who were, quote, butchered by Hamas fighters. Elsewhere, hour after hour, we're seeing Israeli airstrikes pounding Gaza and Hamas rockets streaking across the sky toward Israel. This is the backdrop as we await remarks from President Biden at the White House at any moment. Remarks that the entire world, no doubt, will be watching. Let's get started with CNN's Ben Wiedemann, who's live for us in Jerusalem. Ben, what is the scene where you are?
Well, Jerusalem is relatively quiet, but certainly the area around Gaza and the Israeli cities just to the north of it have had a very noisy day. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon local time, there was a massive barrage of rockets fired from Hamas to the city of Ashkelon. Now, a few hours before that, Abu Ubaidah, who's the spokesman for Hamas's military wing, had warned that Ashkelon would be targeted if its residents did not leave the city. And sure enough, on the dot at 5 p.m. local time, we saw this massive volley being fired out of Gaza. At the same time, Israeli forces struck the main port in Gaza, in fact the only port in Gaza, which is normally only used by fishermen. And this is just the latest series of strikes and counterstrikes we've seen today. The Israelis, since last night, have conducted hundreds of airstrikes on Gaza in one particular neighborhood, Rimel, which is in Gaza City, really reduced to rubble. Now, the death toll on the Palestinian side, the latest numbers we're getting are 830. Those numbers from the Palestinian Health Ministry, more than 4,000 wounded. And of course, on the Israeli side, the latest tally they have of the dead, and it seems to be increasing as they find more and more bodies, is at least 900. Now, the Israeli embassy in Washington was reporting more than 1,000. The Israeli military has yet to confirm that number, but certainly the numbers on both sides are rising, and there is growing anticipation of an Israeli ground incursion into Gaza. There have been many in the past, but this one, many believe, will be certainly greater than ever before. And we did hear Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday say that what we've seen so far is only the beginning in terms of Israel's response to Saturday's massive surprise attack by Hamas. Boris?
And Ben, as you're speaking, we're watching images from moments ago live over Gaza, the sky again lighting up with ammunition and artillery. Ben, we've learned that IDF has added thousands of troop reinforcements at the border with Lebanon. Hezbollah's involvement in the attacks over the weekend, obviously a concern. Tell us what's going on there.
Yes, the Israeli military said that they are deploying tens of thousands of troops along its northern border with Lebanon. Now, yesterday we saw quite a lot of skirmishes, nothing compared to Gaza. Along that border, the Israelis struck and killed 3 Hezbollah fighters. That was acknowledged by Hezbollah. There was also Palestinian Islamic Jihad involved in other skirmishes. The Israelis struck back, hitting targets within southern Lebanon along the border region. And the Israelis acknowledged that so far one of their officers was killed in those strikes. Now, it appears that Hezbollah wants to show that it is in a small way participating in this current conflict, but it appears it's hesitant to really unleash its forces, which by all accounts are far better equipped and trained than those of Hamas. If Hezbollah becomes involved in massive active hostilities with the Israelis, this conflict, which is already proved bloody and violent, will become much, much worse. Boris?
Hello.
The potential potential for a more
Good morning, Palu. This is Ryan at Victoria Brain Injury Society.
Hi.
Hey, I just wanted to remind you you've got an appointment coming up tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Have a great rest of the day.
Boris,
Bye.
thanks very much. Obviously, with the fate of Israeli civilians, and potentially Americans as well, who have been taken hostage, it is hanging heavy over everybody in this country. Up to as many as 150 Israeli children, women, elderly people, men, soldiers have been seized by Hamas. Islamic Jihad says they have as many as 30 being held captive now for a fourth day in Gaza. The families of the missing are moving in an unimaginable agony. My next guest included, I'm joined by Gaia Calderon. 5 members of her family are missing right now. Her brother, her sister, her father, her grandmother, and her cousin. Gaia, thank you for being here. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Tell us about your family members, what happened to them. I understand they were taken from near Oz, which is a kibbutz community, and we have talked to a number of people who have had loved ones kidnapped by Hamas from that location.
Yes, so it's my father, sister, my brother, and my grandma and cousin. I'm going to tell you the story. So basically what happened, it was my father, brother, and sister was in my father's house. My grandma and my cousin was in my grandma's house. I wake up 6 in the morning and just calling my mom and dad to check that it's all good in Niroz. My whole family live in Niroz. I'm the only one who not live there. So my father talked to me and said, Gaia, it's never been like that. I don't know what is happening. And then I'm like, okay, it's all good. Like, it's always happened. It's gonna be okay. After a few minutes, my sister writes me, Gaia, I can hear shooting guns. I think they are here. I can hear them. And I'm like, what? What is going on? Tell me. And try to understand. And then she's writing me, they are here. And I'm asking her, where are you? Are you in the Nomad, in the States? And she's telling me, no, we are outside, hiding. After that message, no response, and then nothing. In the meantime, I'm writing my grandma, and she's telling me, yes, they are here in my house, taking everything, and after that, she really no answer too.
They were in your grandmother's house
This what
already.
happened. Again?
They were inside your grandmother's house already.
Yes, yes, yes. And then.
How did you find out that your
they are-
12-year-old brother was taken?
Okay, so the day after, I'm sitting, trying to do everything I can, the best I can to just find something about them, to see a video maybe, just to know that they are alive. And then I see a video, and it's my brother. And I see the Hamas taking him, grab him. It was so hard to watch it. I had to protect my brother my whole life, so it was so hard. Also, my sister and my father, not in the video. I don't know where are they. This is my only information, the only information I have, and I have nothing to do about it. I'm trying to do the best I can, but I don't really have something to do. I can't go over there and save them.
It's one of the terrible things that so many families are going through here is that because there's so little information about loved ones, often you are finding information from these sick videos taken by Hamas, taken by Islamic Jihad, where you actually see your family member. So you saw your 12-year-old brother being taken by gunmen, being taken by Hamas.
Yes. It was so hard to watch. Um, it's horrible that I need to find out something like that in a video. Uh, Stuff like that don't need to happen
What
in this world.
near Oz, this
Yes.
kibbutz is a community of it's about 400 people at most, 300 to 400 people. I understand at this point it's not clear how many people from that kibbutz are still alive. There are many who are missing. There are many who have been kidnapped, and there are many who have been killed. Have you heard anything from officials here about your loved ones or about others from near Oz?
No, it's just a mess in here. We don't know anything, and no, we don't really know something. We just try to find out. I'm trying to find out on my own, but it doesn't really work. And no one knows anything. I hope I will know soon. I don't even know if they are alive, you know? So hard.
Is there anything you want to say? Is there anything you want to tell people about your loved ones?
Yes, I'm just hoping I will see them soon. I want them back home. I want them here with me. I don't even have a home right now, you know? It's all burned, but it doesn't matter. I just want them with me. I just want them to be alive and back with the family. My mom and my other sister. It's horrible. We don't even know what to do. We just want them back, and we want everyone who could help somehow. Just do it and just try. We need you. Also, my grandma is American, so it's really important to say it because we're all together in this. We need to try do it together. That's my wish.
Calderon, thank you for talking to us, and stay strong, and we'll continue to check in with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
President Biden is set to deliver live remarks at any moment. There are many families like Gaia Calderon's who will be listening very closely to what he has to say. Stay with us.
Create a backyard that's out of this world. Right now, save $30 on the GTA 26 handheld battery pruner. Real steel. Find yours.
That first time you take a step back.
I made that.
With your very own online store.
I sold that.
And you can manage it all in one place.
I built this.
And it was easy, with a partner that puts you first. GoDaddy.
Before and bath fitter. Before and bath fitter. If you have a before bath, now's the time to call Bath Fitter to get a beautiful after. With our unique tub over tub process, there's no mess or stress. Spend smart on a beautiful new bath done right, backed by a lifetime warranty. Join over 2 million happy customers who know it just fits. Bath Fitter. Visit bathfitter.com to book your free consultation.
If your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms are stopping you in your tracks, choose Stelara from the start and move toward relief after the first step.
Podium remains empty. We know the president just got off the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, so he is expected to make his way there in just moments. We're going to bring you his address live as soon as it starts. Meantime, right now, the Israeli military is mobilizing a record number of reservists, some 360,000, as observers are anticipating a ground operation in Gaza. The IDF is also amassing tanks and other military vehicles near the border with the Palestinian territory, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed retaliation on Hamas like never before. Keep in mind, a ground operation could get complicated. Gaza is very densely populated. It puts civilians in the middle of urban warfare, where Hamas can utilize narrow city streets and a complex network of tunnels that can be used to move fighters, store weapons, and launch a series of attacks. We want to discuss the situation now with a military expert who knows firsthand the hazards of urban combat. We're joined now by General Wesley Clark. He was the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO during the Kosovo War. General, thanks so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us. We saw this drone video of Gaza earlier today. This is the aftermath of aerial strikes on the territory. I'm wondering what an Israeli ground operation in this region is going to look like.
Well, first of all, they've got to pick the targets. And the way you would probably do this is to section off Gaza, maybe block by block, figure out how to go in, isolate that area, and work from the outside in. You've got to work against the tunnel network, and you've got to work against snipers and other people on the high ground. Now, you've created a lot of rubble in the city right now, so you got to stay away from those streets if you're trying to move armored vehicles in there. So that adds to the obstacles there. It's going to be a very tough, slow, painstaking operation. You've got to do it with maximum protection for your own troops. Because you have to understand that the Hamas, this is not going to be a surprise to Hamas. They knew that this is what they were going to get. This is what they want. They want to bring that Israeli ground force in and attack it from every direction and put more casualties on it, show that it lacks credibility. So Israel has to do this, has to do it well, has to maintain its military credibility. Extremely difficult operation coming up.
General, you described the targeting of tunnels and areas along that border. There were civilians in Gaza that were trying, or rather were told to evacuate a certain crossing, and this Rafah crossing right here. And it's been complicated, partly because it was targeted. Obviously, you mentioned some of the complications regarding a ground operation. What about the fact that Hamas is holding some 100 to 150 hostages, potentially some American citizens? How does all of that, the difficulty of getting civilians out, and the fact that there are hostages in Gaza, alter the calculus for the Israeli Defense Forces?
Well, obviously, you'll have teams standing by that could do an emergency hostage rescue operation. If you could identify where the hostages are, if you could get entrance into that area with sufficient force to rescue them. But those capabilities will be there, and we'll be monitoring all the electronic and visual intelligence we've got. We'll be looking for other people talking and communicating, people on the ground. We'll do everything we can to locate them. But you know, it's in Hamas' interest not to execute those hostages. They need those hostages as bargaining leverage at the end. So you're going to hear a lot of threats. You may have some out-of-control people who do want to kill the hostages, but my bet would be that the Hamas leadership will not want to give up those hostages.
Now, for the sake of the families of those missing, General, I hope you're right about that. I do want to share with you some new satellite images we have of the Erez crossing complex. So essentially what we're looking at, this right here is Gaza, and this is Israel. This is part of the border, and on it you can see craters in some areas where Israel launched retaliatory strikes. What really stands out to me are breaches in the border wall where Hamas broke through, and you can see them in these circles I'm drawing. This is where Hamas militants were able to get into Israel. It's striking partly because of the scale, General, of the attack. They executed an attack unprecedented in the history of Hamas without Israeli intelligence having a clue that this was going to happen. How is that possible?
It's possible by just working with people you trust, keeping the circle of knowledge small, and only talking face-to-face. No electronic communications. Writing that can go out. You do that, you can maintain security. But you know, Hamas has been there for a long time. We cannot underestimate their sophistication. It's a mistake to think that they're just terrorists out there waving AK-47s. This is a sophisticated military force. It's had training, it's had assistance from the Iranians, maybe some Russian equipment in there for all we know, They can monitor communications. They have cyber. They have anti-aircraft missiles. They have anti-tank missiles. Got a lot of stuff buried underground. They've prepared this for a long time. So I think, we have to anticipate this is not like going
Just a
the
second.
United States Army raced through Baghdad in 2003, shattered the Iraqi guards, and the people in Iraq were like, hey, well, some of us liked him, some of us didn't. Let's see what happens now. That's not what this is. This is a fortress area that's been prepared. Now, how many Hamas fighters are there? 15,000, 20,000? We saw maybe 2,000 committed in this operation. They've got lots of forces left behind and ready and no doubt willing to sacrifice their lives to take Israelis with them. So this is going to be a tough fight. And at the same time, of course, we've got the northern border to worry about. The president's talking about maybe sending another carrier battle group in. And don't forget, the North Koreans are now shipping artillery and ammunition by rail to the Russians to put the pressure on Ukraine. We can never neglect that because that fight in Ukraine is very much in America's interest. They're fighting our battle there against Russian aggression.
Yeah, a lot of conflict to cover. General Wesley Clark, please stand by because we're watching President Biden as he approaches the podium at the White House.
Good afternoon.
Let's listen to his remarks.
There are moments in this life, I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This is an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just slaughtered, in Israel. Among them at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. Celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet to avoid drawing attention. And thousands of wounded, alive but carrying with them the bullet holes and the shrapnel wounds and the memory of what they endured. You all know these traumas never go away. There's still so many families desperately waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, not knowing if they're alive, dead, or hostages. Infants in their mother's arms, grandparents in wheelchairs, Holocaust survivors abducted and held hostage. Hostages whom Hamas has now threatened to execute in violation of every code of human morality. It's abhorrent. The brutality of Hamas, his bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with the third call, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him the United States experience and Israel is experiencing, our response will be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters, there's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, a sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by human tragedy. An atrocity on an appalling scale. We're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and the violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners, and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. When Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier striker to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of the situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. And over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced. They were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me. She said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret weapon here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world, so that the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you. President, what was your reaction?
President Biden making a strong statement as possible about America's support for Israel, his administration's support for Israel, not just emotional support, but military support as well, support for the Iron Dome system. Obviously, also talking about the carrier group and other moves by U.S. forces. With me now, CNN's Clarissa Ward in Ashkelon, Ben Wiedemann is in Dozier is in D.C. Clarissa, a lot of Israelis, no doubt, listening to what President Biden had to say. How do you think they will feel about what they heard?
Say, right? Usually, historically, there has always been the call for restraint in this situation, the call upon Israel to exercise restraint in its response. We did not hear that. We heard a very, very staunch and solemn commitment by the U.S. to stand with its Israeli partners. We heard specifics about where those efforts may lie going forward. He talked about supplying more ammunition, more interceptors to keep those iron domes running well. He talked about collaborating closely with Israeli intelligence to try to do whatever can possibly to be done to bring some of those hostages safely out of Gaza. Of course, he also said that there are, as we know, Americans among those being held hostage in the Gaza Strip. But I also think, Anderson, that this was a speech for Americans too, right? And he talked about the importance of coming together, both sides of the aisle in Congress. There's no place for hate in America, and really urging the U.S. Political apparatus, if you will, to take a united stance and work together on this with the Israelis. Anderson.
Kim Dozier, I'm wondering what you thought monitoring this.
That is President Biden's message to the American people, that essentially we are going to war together with Israel to get Americans out and to get others out. There won't be U.S. boots on the ground, but the way he described the brutality of attacks that we're still trying to confirm as reporters, and he discussed it in such stark terms of the hole that it leaves in your soul, this kind of grief. And there was also a pointed warning to Iran, without naming Iran, that anyone thinking of interfering in what's going to happen next, don't. So I think this is a message that we're going to see a tough Israeli ground incursion into Gaza. There may be civilian casualties, but he is making the argument to the American people that because of the brutality of what was done, this has got to happen next.
And Ben Wiedemann, standing by in Jerusalem. There was no equivocation in this statement by the president.
No, I mean, in the past, in previous instances where there were flare-ups between Gaza and Israel, we would always hear the same thing: condemnation of whether it's Hamas or Islamic Jihad firing the rockets, and then calls for restraint. There is no restraint. Call for restraint that we heard from President Biden. This was a very unequivocal declaration that the United States stands behind Israel, and his references to the carrier group that's headed toward the Eastern Mediterranean, certainly I think among Hamas's ranks is going to raise concern that perhaps the United States isn't just sending its hardware to the Eastern Mediterranean as a show of force. I think there's a hint that there's more to it than just that. Now, I think that certainly in Gaza, people listening to this speech are going to be concerned. Let's keep in mind that Hamas is not particularly popular in Gaza. I've been in Gaza, for instance, in 2014. I arrived in Gaza just hours after that war began, and really there was a sense of trepidation of what was to come. And certainly what we're hearing from Gaza is people are saying, we're not members of Hamas, we're not part of this war, but they're paying the price. And the worry is that now it's been made clear to Israel, no need to use restraint. The United States supports you completely, and this could be a very grim prospect for people in Gaza who don't support Hamas but are going to pay perhaps a very high price. Anderson?
Yeah, President Biden did talk about the rules of war and following the rules of war, but obviously a very strong statement of support for the government here in Israel. I want to talk about all this with the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Flora Hassan Nahum. Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering what you thought of what you heard from President Biden.
Well, we're very, very pleased with this type of support. It's completely unequivocal. I think that President Biden has made clear what moral clarity is. And that is when you see a genocidal regime that came into this country through a border that we have with them, because people forget Israel left Gaza in 2005. We left Gaza and we pulled out 7,000 Jewish settlements from Gaza so that the Palestinians could start being autonomous, building their country. And this is what we did almost 20 years ago. Originally, it was ruled by Fatah, and then a year and a half later, Hamas came into power, elected into power, and they had a choice. They all had a choice. They could have turned the Gaza Strip into Dubai, or they could have turned it into Beirut. And they chose to turn it into Beirut. Everybody knows that Hamas is the long arm of Iran, as is Hezbollah in the north, and the massacre and the incredibly cruel humanitarian, disaster that's occurred over the last few days. Anderson, 2 hours ago, we got a report that the Israeli army found 40 decapitated babies. We're talking about ISIS here. We're talking about scenes that we saw in Afghanistan 10, 15 years ago. We saw the same thing, Boko Haram in Africa. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have zero value for life, not ours, and not even their own.
Yeah. I do just want to point out, I just spoke to the IDF spokesman. They have not confirmed what you have said. And in fact, I don't think anybody has said it was that many. I'm not going to quibble over numbers, but the IDF has said that information not confirmed. So we're being very cautious. But clearly, the troops on the ground who were at Kfar Aza kibbutz were deeply affected by what they saw. There are reporters there as well who have seen bodies being removed. It was a brutal attack, a terror attack, just as we have seen in kibbutzes all across the border near Oz as well. Many people killed, kidnapped there. If you can't talk about what it's like in your city right now, what you are hearing from people. I mean, there are so many families waiting for word on their loved ones, and there's not anybody we've met in Israel who does not know somebody who is either missing or wounded, or dead, or kidnapped.
Well, that's the thing. When you live in a small country, we're less than 10 million people. Everybody is connected to everybody. Some good friends of mine who actually appeared in your press conference this afternoon, Rachel Goldberg, who's the mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who's an American citizen, 23-year-old kid. He celebrated his birthday last week, and he was at that concert. He is now being confirmed to have been taken hostage. He lost an arm in the firefight, and we're very worried for his well-being, because if he doesn't get medical attention, this is life-threatening for him. Like him, there's another 6-7 Americans that are held hostage, and it's of course not just the Americans.
40 decapitated babies by Hamas. 40 decapitated babies.
Any operation, very, very complicated. Hamas has been planning this type of scale of attack for 11 years. They've tried in so many ways. They built tunnels into civilian areas, which thankfully the IDF found and closed down. They've tried explosive balloons. They've been planning this for a long time, and they've not been planning this on their own. And finally, they got the success they were looking for, which is absolutely, I mean, to have a situation where old ladies are being killed in their beds, little children are being, murdered in front of their parents and vice versa, disabled people, women, we have reports of women being raped in Gaza by these people. And, President Biden is right, there's no justification. And even if the retaliation is tough, the retaliation of the armed forces in the Second World War also killed a lot of innocent Germans, but this was a civilizational war. It's the forces of evil, the forces that want to take us back 500 years, run by Iran, and the forces of good, people that want peace and prosperity. Thankfully, many in the Arab world have now joined Israel in those countries that want peace and prosperity. And I don't think it's any coincidence that thanks to the American administration, the peace that was being brokered from Saudi Arabia, the people who have the most to lose from that are the Iranians. So this was the time to do this. And again, this is a civilizational struggle. We're the first stop on that struggle, but the rest of the world is next.
Yeah, certainly the negotiations with Saudi Arabia for some sort of comprehensive peace agreement was of great concern to the religious forces in Iran. Deputy Mayor Flor Hassan Nahum, I appreciate your time. Stay with CNN for all the breaking news. We'll have more from the region just ahead.
With fast signs, brew signature flavor into every sip and sign. Fast signs, make your statement.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way. Savino Daily Moisture with prebiotic.
Crisis in Israel, saying that Congress must take urgent action to provide security funding for Israel, what he called a critical partner. Before anything gets passed in Congress, though, the House needs a new speaker. Republican Congressman Andy Barr of Kentucky is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he joins us now. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. First, I want to get your reaction to the confirmation that we got from the president. At least 14 Americans killed in these attacks. American citizens apparently also among the hostages being held by Hamas.
Yeah, this is exactly why this is in the national security interest of the United States to stand with Israel in their fight against Islamic terrorism, against these Iranian terrorist proxies, Hamas, and others like Hezbollah and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which also threaten Israel at this time on their borders. Not only are Americans among the victims and among the hostages that Hamas has taken into Gaza, but the United States is also the target here.
Congressman, I hate to interrupt, but this is Jake Sullivan from the podium in the press room of the White House. Let's listen.
And we're actively working with Israelis to determine the whereabouts of the missing, including missing American citizens. As the president just said, what we've seen from Hamas these past few days was the same evil and barbarity that we've seen from ISIS. The unspeakable horrors they perpetrated on innocent people, women, children, the elderly, babies. These were the scenes we saw in Iraq and Syria as ISIS rampaged through. As President Biden said, this is not some distant tragedy. The bonds between Israel and America run long and they run deep. And we stand with Israel, not just in these dark days, but at all times. As Kareem just said, the President has been deeply engaged in giving direction to his national security team to take action to support Israel in its hour of need. In his direction, the United States has surged ammunition and interceptors for Iron Dome, and the President spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu just a little while ago to talk about additional capabilities that Israel will need, and he pledged that American planes will be landing in Israel with those capabilities in the days ahead. And now, at the direction of the President, we are working with Congress to make sure that Israel maintains supply of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens, as well as the many U.S. citizens who live, work, and travel in Israel. Also at President Biden's direction, the U.S. military has enhanced its force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence, including the movement of a carrier strike group into the eastern Mediterranean, and we are prepared to move additional assets as necessary. Let me be clear, we did not move the carrier for Hamas. We moved the carrier to send a clear message of deterrence to other states or non-state actors that might seek to widen this war. The President has also tasked us with engaging in contingency planning for any and all escalation scenarios, and we are now deeply engaged in that planning, and we are consulting with allies and partners as well about all of the potential scenarios that might unfold in the days ahead. Let me repeat what we've now said many times and what the President said just a short while ago, so that everyone, including enemies who are thinking of exploiting the current situation, hear it loud and clear. The United States has always and will always have Israel's back. And to those families undergoing the unfathomable pain of having loved ones missing, our hearts go out to you. We cannot imagine the anguish you must be feeling right now. We know that U.S. citizens are among the missing, and we know that U.S. citizens, as the President just said, are among the hostages. We are working with the Israeli government and with our regional partners on every aspect of the hostage crisis, including sharing intelligence and deploying experts from across the U.S. government to advise the Israeli government and coordinate with them on hostage recovery efforts. As the President just said, there is no higher priority than the safety and well-being of American citizens being held hostage overseas. Over the coming days, we'll continue to stand strongly with Israel to ensure that it is able to defend itself, and my team and I are working with our colleagues across the U.S. government every hour to keep the President updated on the latest developments, to take his direction and put it into action, and we'll continue following his direction to provide Israel and the people of Israel all the support required at this time of need. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Yeah.
Jake, thank you.
We'll do you first and then...
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the American hostages, can you first of all tell us how many are we talking about, several or a dozen hostages, and do you know anything about their condition at all?
We do not know about their condition, and we cannot confirm a precise number of American citizens. We believe that there are 20 or more Americans who at this point are missing, but I want to underscore and stress that does not mean necessarily that there are 20 or more American hostages. Just that is the number who are currently unaccounted for. We will work hour by hour both to determine whether we can account for any of those Americans or to confirm exactly what the number of Americans are being held hostage, and we will come back to you with that information as soon as we have it. As you know, very sadly and tragically, the number of dead has risen with each passing hour, and that's true of the total number. It's also true of Americans, which has gone up just today from an earlier report this morning of 12, then 13, now 14. So I cannot give you a precise number. I can tell you that number of unaccounted for at this time. That number could change too, but I want to underscore that that is not a statement from me that we have that many hostages. We do not know the number of hostages we have at this time.
And did the President discuss with the Prime Minister the possibility of a ground incursion into Gaza, and also how that might affect the American hostages that are in Gaza that are now confirmed?
I'm not going to get into the operational discussions that the President and the Prime Minister had. That is important for them to be able to keep in a discrete channel between them. What I will tell you is that the President and Prime Minister did discuss how the United States can deploy expertise to help work on the hostage recovery efforts. That is what the United States is in the process of doing right now.
Under what circumstances would you put American forces on the ground to help out?
At this point, that is not something that is under planning. What we are focused on when we talk about sending experts, it is people who can work on intelligence, who can work on overall planning, who can work on coordination with the Israeli government. We are not currently sending forces to Israel, and I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah.
Has the president spoken to any of the families of the 14 American citizens who were killed?
He has not yet spoken with the families, but the State Department has been in contact with those families, and the president has been making this his highest priority as he receives briefings each day about what we are doing to try to determine both what's happening with the missing and also to ensure that we can secure the bodies of those who have perished and ensure that they get returned to their loved ones.
Are you also reaching out to those whose loved ones may be unaccounted for? One family member of a missing American said that there's been no formal attempt by the U.S. government to update the families.
We have, in fact, updated the families of the unaccounted for Americans that we know of. If there are Americans for some reason who have not yet been reached out to, that will be remedied immediately because Secretary Blinken, President Biden, everybody in the U.S. government is making this the highest priority. So we are in very regular contact with every family who has someone either missing or unaccounted for, and anyone who's not currently on that list for whatever reason, we will take care of that. That is going to be our highest priority. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Two quick questions, one for clarity. The Iron Dome replenishment, has it already arrived or is it on its way?
Some of the interceptors have come out of stocks that the U.S. had in country, so those have gone over to the Israelis in short order, and then we will be flowing in additional Iron Dome interceptors so that they have the capabilities they need to sustain their Iron Dome defense systems. We are also looking at other ways that we can help augment their air defense capabilities as well as we look ahead, not just to what's happening now, but to potential contingencies that could unfold.
And then secondly, what can you say about Iran's role in the Hamas attack? Is that one of the actors you were worried about widening the war?
Well, we've said since the beginning that Iran is complicit in this attack in a broad sense because they have provided the lion's share of the funding for the military wing of Hamas. They have provided training, they have provided capabilities, they have provided support, and they have had engagement and contact with Hamas over years and years. And all of that has played a role in contributing to what we have seen. Now, as to the question of whether Iran knew about this attack in advance or helped plan or direct this attack, we do not, as of the moment I'm standing here at the podium, have confirmation of that. We are talking to our Israeli counterparts on a daily basis about this question. We're looking back through our intelligence holdings to see if we have any further information on that. We're looking to acquire further intelligence. And if there is an update to that, I'll share it with you. But as I stand here today, while Iran plays this broad role, sustained, deep, and dark role in providing all of this support and capabilities to Hamas in terms of this particular gruesome attack on October 7th, we don't currently have that information. We will continue to look for it, and if we find it, we will share that with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. Looking back at the last few days, how did Israel miss this attack coming?
That's a question for you to ask the Israeli government. Obviously, the Israeli government has placed a high premium on its intelligence capacity as it relates to Hamas, as it relates to the West Bank, as it relates to Hezbollah, and why it is that they did not have warning from this is not a question that I can answer from this podium.
What about U.S. intelligence? Was there anything that crosses your desk that would suggest that this was coming?
We did not see anything that suggested an attack of this type was going to unfold any more than the Israelis did.
And you're meeting in the Situation Room today. We saw an image earlier. At some point, undoubtedly in the last few days, the president has seen the images of the dead Israelis. What has been his reaction when shown those images?
You've seen him now twice. You've heard his voice. And this has been a deeply emotional time for all of us, as I'm sure it is for many people in this room who know people or know people who know people who are killed or who are missing. And all of us have developed close relationships with our Israeli counterparts. President Biden has a decades-long relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he can hear the pain in Prime Minister Netanyahu's voice when he talks to him. I hear the pain of my counterparts when I talk to them. So this is not just about policy or strategy. This is personal for us, and it's personal for the American people with their bonds with the Israeli people. And so President Biden has seen and felt the deep emotional resonance of this, but he has also held the conviction that his job as president is to make sure that he has the clarity of mind and purpose to take the actions necessary so that we are standing with Israel in its hour of need, so that we are working to deter a widening of this conflict, and so we are getting Israel the tools that it requires to defend itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. You just laid out all of the ways that Iran is complicit in this and facilitated it over years of support for Hamas. Is that reason enough to refreeze the $6 billion that the U.S. helped unlock for them to get in exchange for the prisoners?
We have not yet had a dollar of that $6 billion spent, and I will leave it at that.
But will you refreeze it based on this activity that you've just laid out, all of the ways that they are complicit in this? The administration said that if we see them going in the wrong direction, that we would stop that down. I understand the position that you guys have, that not a dollar of this has been spent. But will you prevent it from getting into their hands to allow them to, do what they do that you just laid out?
Let me just reiterate what I said, because it's unequivocal. Not a dollar of that money has been spent, and I will leave it at that.
Would you consider?
Yes.
Jacob, if I can ask you, will the U.S. support Israel's military attacks in Gaza for as long as it takes, until the hostages are freed, or until Hamas is destroyed? I guess in simple terms, how much retaliation in Gaza is the U.S. willing to accept?
I don't think of this in terms of retaliation. This is about providing support to Israel as it seeks to defend its territory and deal with an ongoing imminent threat from Hamas terrorists who, as I said before, are acting a heck of a lot like ISIS terrorists in their barbarity and cruelty. That requires going after Hamas terrorist targets in Gaza, because even as we speak, even as I stand here, there could be rockets flying out of Gaza. Going after those sites, that's not retaliation. That's Israel stepping up to defend itself and ensure the safety and security of the Israeli people. And we're going to support them for as long as they need to ensure that Israel is safe and secure. And I can't put a timetable on that.
So to be clear, is the goal the destruction of Hamas, the guarantee that Hamas cannot launch attacks from there, the confirmation that all Americans and Israelis have been secured safely from there? Where do you draw the line? Is there a red line, and where do you draw that line of what you need to accomplish, what they may accomplish?
I'm not standing up here to draw red lines. What I'm standing up here to say is that in its hour of need, as Israel embarks on an operation to try to protect its country, protect the Jewish state of Israel, and to go after the threats that it faces, and also working closely with them hand in hand to try to secure the release and recovery of American and other hostages, we will do all of that. And I'm not here to draw red lines or issue warnings or give lectures to anybody. I'm here to say that the president has given us direction to take a series of actions. We are undertaking those actions, and we will continue to do so in the weeks ahead.
Last one, very quickly, that we heard from the families of Americans who are unaccounted for right now. They spoke publicly in Israel today. You said the president hasn't spoken to them directly. What is the president's message to those families right now who said it is the responsibility of the president of the United States to make sure their loved ones come home safely?
The president said in his remarks today that as president of the United States, he has no higher priority than the safety and well-being of Americans held hostage overseas. And he has proven in country after country his willingness to go further than any other president has gone before to secure the release and bring those people home. He is going to try to do that in this case as well, but that is a high priority for him, and that is the message that he is sending, along with a deep sense of understanding of the grief and hurt and pain and anguish they are feeling right now as they wait to hear news of their loved ones. Yeah.
Jake, the president has remarks today referred to seeking for assistance for partners, plural. Does that suggest that you've decided strategically to ask Congress for a package that includes both Ukraine aid as well as aid for Israel? And, Chairman McCall suggested even including border and Taiwan money and that. I'm just kind kind of hoping you could give a state of play of how you guys are thinking about this in your interactions with the Hill.
So I'm not going to get ahead of the president's request, and I'm not going to take the place of the OMB director who will present the request that we send up. But the president was very clear today that we will be making a request to the Congress, and it will include a request for funding for support to Israel. And he has also been equally clear that we are going to renew our request to the Congress for aid to Ukraine. What exact form that all takes, that will be worked out and presented by others, not by me. But the notion that we're going to go up and ask for Israel aid and ask for Ukraine aid, that's unequivocal. We are going to do that.
Beyond Iron Dome and ammunition, were there any other requests made by Prime Minister Netanyahu today that we can expect to be part of that package?
As I mentioned in my opening comments, he did make specific requests with respect to other capabilities. I'm not going to get into the details of that from this podium, but he and the president discussed that. I spoke with Lloyd Austin, who was on his way to the NATO Defense Ministerial about those requests. Secretary Austin is following up on that. And as I said in my opening comments, you can expect to see American planes flying into Israel to deliver military capabilities to support Israel. Yeah.
Just to follow up on Iron Dome, how effective has it been in deterring the attacks? And I know you mentioned this that in terms of the interceptors, but has Israel asked for interceptors on an ongoing basis in light of the situation?
You ask how effective it's been in deterring. I can't say that it is deterred, obviously, because a huge number of rockets have fired, but it has been effective, as it typically is, in taking a lot of those rockets out of the sky and saving countless lives by doing so. Now, of course, some rockets have gotten through to tragic cost, and that has been the pattern we have seen in previous conflicts as well. Now, Israel will have an ongoing need for interceptors, because an air defense system is only as good as your ability to continue to put interceptors in that can take out the rockets that are coming to kill civilians and rain down terror on cities. And we are committed to making sure that we are working with Israel to produce and supply the requisite number of Iron Dome interceptors so that they can keep those systems going on an indefinite basis going forward, because we cannot say how long this will be going on. Yeah.
Thank you. Triple your support in Israel militarily and rightly denounce this horrific and heinous act against Israeli civilians. How can we make sure that Israel goes after Hamas and its infrastructure in Gaza? Not 2 million Palestinians who are trapped with no water, with no electricity, with no medical supply. The UN schools are overthrown now. The number of dead is reaching 850 so far, including 6 members of one family of the former ambassador to Washington. How can you make sure that this is not revenge, but actually going after Hamas, who committed this horrible crime?
Well, as the president said today, the difference between countries like the United States and Israel is that we do not deliberately target civilians. We are strongest when we are committed to the rule of law, and we work to make sure that all military operations are conducted consistent with the rule of law and the law of war. That is something that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu have discussed, not just in this context, but in previous contexts as well. That is something the United States has always stood for and always will continue to stand for. Yeah.
Can you confirm that the Egyptian intelligence has passed information to the Israelis that the attack is imminent, or some attack is going to happen?
I cannot confirm that. Yeah.
Prime Minister Netanyahu tweeted on Saturday telling residents of Gaza to leave now because we will operate forcefully everywhere. Where is the idea of where people in Gaza will go?
This is something also that we have been discussing with our counterparts in Israel and with our counterparts in Egypt. And without getting into the specifics of safe passage for civilians and so forth, I will say it's something that the U.S. government is seized with in supporting how we do that operationally. But the details of that are something that are being discussed among the operational agencies, and I don't want to share too much of that publicly at this time.
Imminently, or what is it?
I'll leave it at the fact that we are focused on this question. There are consultations ongoing, and I'll share more when I have an update for you. Yeah.
Following up on that question about what the president said about talking to the Israeli prime minister about democracies and the laws of war, was that a warning to the prime minister, and why did the president feel that was necessary to bring that up in the call today?
It was not a warning. The call today was not President Biden warning Prime Minister Netanyahu about anything. It was two leaders talking to one another, one who's leading a nation that has suffered an unfathomable attack, and another nation who is standing behind them foursquare in the defense of their country. And the conversation carried on in those terms, and the two leaders spoke in a collaborative fashion, as they always do. No, I cannot accept the characterization of your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. I have two questions. First, some reports are saying that IRGC commander was in Lebanon. Ismail Khani was in Lebanon a few days ago, and he left to Syria. Also, you are saying that Iran is complicit in this attack. Are you trying to downplay the Iranian role here? What are you waiting for to take an action? And my second question, what assessment do you have on where other Iranian militias stand now, whether in Iraq? We also heard the Houthis threat now. Can you give us an update? And is there a risk on the U.S. troops in the region? Thank you.
So on your first question, I laid out our view, which is the broad complicity based on the long-standing support that Hamas is giving to Iran. We don't have specific information that ties Iran to this attack. At this time, we don't have that information. We may gain that information in the hours and days ahead, but we don't presently have it. So that's an answer to your first question with respect to the intelligence. With respect to the question of the various militia groups across the region, we do believe that they pose an urgent threat, and that it is certainly distinctly possible that they choose to try to exploit or take advantage of this situation, and we have been sending clear warnings that doing so will result in a firm response and consequences from the United States. And that goes across the board, and we have been clear also in sending a message of deterrence through the movement of the Carrier Strike Group into the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as through the assurance that we will sustain F-16s, F-35s, A-10s in theater to be able to deal with any contingency that the United States might have to deal with in the days ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. The European Union says it opposes a total siege of Gaza. What's the US position on that?
I've seen those reports, but my understanding is that is not the concept of siege is not something that, in fact, is going to be pursued by the Israeli government. But we are consulting with the Israeli government about their actions in this regard. And like I said before to a previous question, President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu had the opportunity to talk through the difference between going full bore against Hamas terrorists and how we distinguish between terrorists and innocent civilians. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jake. Just zooming out to China, is the U.S. worried that this attention now to Israel is going to detract resources from the Indo-Pacific? Have communicated with Beijing about this attack in Israel? And just going to Senator Schumer's comments, he said he was disappointed by President Xi's soft response, because that's been part of the discussions here.
We're not entirely surprised by the PRC's response based on their history of commentary on these kinds of issues. We believe that the United States is capable of supporting Ukraine and Europe, of supporting our allies in the Indo-Pacific, and of supporting our close ally Israel in its hour of need. And we believe we have the resources, tools, and capacities to be able to effectively do that. And part of our job is to ensure that we are working across all of these theaters at once, and that's precisely what we're doing each day. Yeah.
There have been some Republican lawmakers who have argued the U.S. can't support two wars. Could you address some of that and talk a little bit about how you'll make these requests to Congress and make the case that the U.S. needs to invest, maybe not with troops on the ground, but with military and economic aid in both Israel and Ukraine?
Standing for Ukraine so that Russian aggression does not prevail in Europe, the amount of resources that we need to put into that compared to the amount of resources we would have to put in if Russia were in fact to conquer Ukraine and then potentially have its aggression continue across Europe, it is so much more cost effective to take the action now as opposed to pay the huge price later, a price that might ultimately, as it has in the past, require the actual deployment of American troops to combat. So better to support the Ukrainians as they stand firm against Russian aggression and do so on a sustained basis. And we have the budget wherewithal to be able to do that. We also have the budget wherewithal to be able to provide Israel what it needs. And we firmly reject the notion that the United States of America cannot at once support the freedom and loving people of Ukraine and support the state of Israel. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jake. Is the administration working with Israel and Egypt to open the Rafah crossing to try to ensure evacuations are possible? And then also, I know that you said that in conversations with Israeli leaders, you don't think that a complete siege is something that they may be attempting to do in Gaza, but is there any counsel of restraint from the administration to Israel?
So on the first question, in reference to a previous question, I spoke about our consultations with the Israelis and the Egyptians about how to deal with the challenge of civilians who want to leave Gaza. I'm not going to get into the details of that, about a specific crossing or so forth, only to say that that is something we are focused on and we are working on. And I want to lead those conversations in diplomatic channels, at least for the moment. When we have more to offer on that, I'll be sure that we do so. And then we are having conversations with the Israelis, as I have described. And again, at this podium, I'm not going to go into details on them in terms of what precise messages we're passing. It's important that we be able to talk to the Israelis in the way that we always do, as good friends, as honest friends, and we will continue to do that. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. So on the home front, over 150 people who are on the terrorist watch list have been seized along the southern border this fiscal year, and we've reported that there's been over 1.5 million known gotaways since the Biden administration took office. Is this something the American people should be worried about right now?
We continue to remain vigilant about terrorist threats to the homeland from anywhere. It is something that we are very much working on, that we are consulting with the Congress on, that we are seeking to secure the necessary resources to continue to work through. And anytime we see any threat stream involving a terrorist threat to the homeland, we mobilize every asset and resource of the U.S. government to go after that. And that includes information and analysis that we have shared with the Congress about plots emanating from the Middle East, plots emanating from other places. We'll continue to do that. We also will continue to take steps to pursue a humane, orderly border policy, and we will work with the Congress in the weeks ahead to continue to get the resources we need to be able to do that. I would point out that in the last supplemental, we actually sought additional funding for the border, which was not forthcoming in the ultimate package that went through. So the Biden administration has said to Congress already, we're looking for more resources to be able to deal with the continuing challenges that we have at the border. Yeah.
Jake, the president doesn't have a confirmed ambassador to Israel at this point. What are you doing to get Jack Lew confirmed, given he was nominated about a month ago? The nomination was sent to the Senate in late September. What's the plan to get him on the ground?
Well, first, the Senate is coming back into session next week. Second, when they do, we are going to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and particularly the leaders on both sides and the chair and ranking of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to make that happen as soon as humanly possible, and then get him out to the region immediately thereafter.
Is that your top priority when Congress returns, apart from the aid requests that you're talking about?
Well, it's hard to answer top priority in the sense that our top priority when Congress comes back is going to be the full spectrum of needs that Israel has. Some of that is related to the support that we're seeking from Congress, and then, of course, having high-level diplomatic representation is going to be critical as well. So we will move urgently on that the minute that they come back. Yeah.
One of the things earlier, I'm sorry, can you just clarify your answer?
Sorry, it's the...
Yeah. Just one question. Can you just give us where things stand with the normalization deal? Is that on hold now? Is there any progress? Have you seen any progress with that?
So we are right now focused on dealing with the immediate challenge that we are confronting and that Israel is confronting. And so I'm not going to give a characterization on the state of play on normalization. It's not on hold, but obviously over the last 4 days, all of our attention with respect to our support for Israel has been focused squarely on this conflict, on this heinous, brutal attack, and on helping Israel be able to defend itself. We're going to continue to try to do that.
Can you just clarify your answer? Your yes?
You and the president have both compared Hamas to ISIS. What does that say about the U.S. approach to Hamas going forward?
Well, we have labeled Hamas a terrorist group for years, if not decades. And we have consistently supported Israel in its efforts to fight back against and undermine Hamas, and we will continue to do so. In the immediate term, what it means is working with Israel to ensure that they are able to go after that Hamas threat in Gaza effectively, relentlessly, and to the point where they feel that their security and their deterrence has been fully restored. Yeah.
Can I just ask real quick, I'm sorry. Mr. Sullivan, are you concerned at all that those who are here in the U.S., terrorists who are here in the U.S., may be emboldened by what's happening now? And just to piggyback on what was asked earlier, because we do know that there are people sort of lurking here, is there a concern that there may be a flare-up?
The president put out a written statement yesterday with multiple elements to it. One of those elements was about the focus that we have right now on protecting Americans here at home against anyone who would seek to exploit or piggyback on what has unfolded, these gruesome events that have unfolded in Israel. Part of that is about protecting places of worship, synagogues, and ensuring that we don't see a kind of virulent form of anti-Semitism sparked by what has just happened. And then part of that is about ensuring that any terrorist threat here in the United States or to the United States or to Americans anywhere in the world, that we are at a heightened state of vigilance to deal with that. That's something the president directed his team. It's something he spoke to yesterday in that statement, and it's something that he will be convening his national security team on this week because it remains a very high priority. And I'll take the last question.
Does the administration regret making the prisoner swap with Iran in light of these attacks?
The United States does not regret bringing home American citizens who have been unjustly detained abroad. As I said before, the president has no higher priority than to get Americans home. Right now, we have Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. That is a high priority. Bringing those Americans home from Iran was a high priority, from Afghanistan, from Venezuela, from other places as well. And we stand by bringing those people home because that is the duty of the commander-in-chief, is to get innocent Americans out of captivity in places that they are being unjustly detained. Thank you.
So you've just been hearing from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan at the White House, a wide-ranging, detailed press conference. He is now confirming at least 14 Americans have been killed after the terror attacks began by Hamas on Israel Saturday morning. Sullivan said it's believed that there are 20 or more Americans unaccounted for. Unaccounted for does not necessarily mean kidnapped. It just means not sure if they are dead, wounded somewhere. They are simply unaccounted for and missing. There's a number of things he spoke to, and I just want to quickly tick through them. He also talked about the highest priority of trying to get Americans who are in captivity, to get them out of it, to get them home. He also talked about the importance of communicating with Americans here in Israel. That's been one of the complaints you've heard from some American citizens who feel that they have not had enough communication with U.S. officials. He's talked about augmenting U.S. efforts and the Biden administration's efforts to augment Israel's defense capabilities, in particular the Iron Dome system, providing and funding more interceptors for that Iron Dome system. As you know, there's been a large number of incoming rockets, an unprecedented number of incoming rockets into Israel. So as this continues, getting more of those interceptors for the Iron Dome is going to be important. About the role of Iran, he said that Iran is broadly complicit in this attack, given their long support for Hamas as well as Islamic Jihad. He did say they have not seen proof that Iran had advance warning of this. He was pushed on whether there's been any consideration by the Biden administration to reverse its decision to unfreeze some $6 billion in Iranian assets to the Iranian regime. He would not answer that question. The U.S., he said, did not see this coming. When asked about the failure of Israeli intelligence, he pointed out U.S. intelligence agencies did not see this attack coming. He also reiterated the importance of the rule of the rule operating under the rules of war. When asked, this is a particularly interesting question. We're going to talk to our Ben Wiedemann about this as well as Clarissa Ward. When asked about statements by the IDF that citizens in Gaza, the Palestinians in Gaza, should leave areas, the question was, where can they go? He would not get specific, but he said that details are being discussed, focused on this question. He said he's not going to get into sort of ahead of the diplomatic discussions that going on, not getting into details of potential specific border crossings or crossings. And he talked about the importance of a heightened state of vigilance by U.S. Law enforcement domestically within the United States, and also U.S. citizens and U.S. government officials abroad. I do want to bring in Commercial Ward, who is in Ashkelon. Also, Ben Wiedemann is in Jerusalem for us tonight. Ben Wiedemann, in particular, you've spent, you lived in Egypt. There is a border crossing to Egypt. When you hear Jake Sullivan talk about diplomatic discussions about where civilians in Gaza can go, and as you pointed out earlier, Ben, there are many civilians who do not like Hamas, do not like being ruled by Hamas, dominated by Hamas. When you hear about that idea of border crossings, is there a precedent for that? Where can they go?
Well, there are only two borders, Israel and Egypt. The Egyptian border, the main crossing point is Rafah. Now, in previous flare-ups between Israel and Gaza, the Egyptians were not very open to any sort of flood of Palestinian refugees coming out. And in fact, this time is similar. There doesn't appear to be any willingness by the Egyptian authorities to allow this to happen. They don't want hundreds of thousands of Palestinians flooding into the Sinai Peninsula. Now, in January of 2008, I was in Gaza when Hamas actually blew up a long stretch of the wall that had been constructed between Egypt and Gaza, and what I saw was hundreds of thousands. In fact, more than half of the population of Gaza left Gaza simply because they're cooped up in that place. The Egyptians panicked. They didn't know how to deal with it. Eventually, they had to bring in extra forces, bring the area under control, and force the Palestinians back. So they don't want the Gazans to come out. So really, there's nowhere else to go. The Israelis obviously aren't going to allow the people of Gaza in. So I'm not quite sure what sort of diplomatic solution there is to allow the people of Gaza to leave. The Egyptians simply don't want them to come in. Anderson?
And Ben, in terms of Gazans leaving Gaza City and trying, is there some sort of solution of having residents leave Gaza City somewhere else? I mean, obviously, look, the Gaza Strip is small. Is there some other place to go outside of Gaza City?
Well, Gaza, there's Gaza City, there's Khan Yunis, there's the city of Rafah in the far south, but all of these areas are being struck. Hamas has infrastructure in all of these areas, so really, we're not talking about a very large area. It's perhaps twice the size of Washington, D.C., so you might be able to flee from northwest to southeast, but there's not really anywhere to go. It's a very small, cramped place. And the Israelis believe they have targets in most of the Gaza Strip, so there's nowhere to go. And in addition to that, and I think this point has been made clear very vividly before, unlike Israel, there are no bomb shelters in Gaza. There are shelters for Hamas and its leaders, but for ordinary people, the best they can do is perhaps hide in the basement, and as we've seen from some of the intense Israeli strikes, even those buildings aren't very solid. Anderson?
But to your point, Ben, that Hamas has built, according to Israeli authorities, Hamas has built a network of tunnels running underneath Gaza City. That's not for civilians to hide in. That is for Gaza fighters and others to move about. Is that correct?
That's correct. These are not sort of like the Kyiv subway system where the population can go and take cover. These are secret tunnels, and in fact, I was in Gaza when I'm trying to think, in 2021 when there was a fairly intense round of attack and counterattack between Hamas and Israel. And what we saw in some of the areas, there were very suspicious sort of cracks in the roads where it would appear there were tunnels underneath. So there's a very intricate and extensive tunnel system under Gaza, but it's not for ordinary people, Anderson.
Yeah, not for civilians to be able to hide for their lives. Clarissa, President Biden said tonight today in the U.S. that the administration is sending aid, military equipment to Israel, particularly for Iron Dome. Just talk about how critical that resupply for Israeli forces will be.
Absolutely critical, Anderson. I mean, it has been quite the afternoon and evening here in the city of Ashkelon. There has just been a very steady stream of volleys of rockets pounding into this city, most of them, however, being intercepted by that Iron Dome. Some of them, though, making impact. We spoke to one woman whose home had taken a direct hit. She was in her shelter, which, as Ben correctly and importantly points out, people here on this side of the border have a very different story on the Gaza side of the border. But, it's not, rockets are not the only threat that they're contending with here at the moment. And the reason I'm wearing my helmet again, even though it's a little quiet, is that we just had a situation. Hotel told everybody to get inside their rooms. Reports of a gunman potentially on the streets. There was a lot of police activity. We've been hearing helicopters in the sky as well, Apache helicopter gunships. We've heard some bursts from a machine gun. Again, not clear at all, I want to stress, whether there is a gunman on the streets, whether there is in fact a significant incident taking place. It seems fairly quiet for the moment, but what it goes to show you is that when you're in this situation, when you're facing so many different kinds of threats, it very quickly can get chaotic and confused. And so in that sense, you can understand, we're hearing some more jets as well going overhead in the skies. So in that sense, you can understand that the Israelis are appealing to the Americans for all the help and coordination and cooperation that they can get as they go about plotting whatever these next steps may be. And as we talked about last hour, Anderson, with regards to President Biden's remarks, I think it was less about what he didn't say than what he did say. What he didn't say was calling for restraint. Again, raising the specter or the possibility that we may be looking at a more significant escalation, possibly in the form of a ground offensive, as so many have been speculating in these last couple of days with all that troop and military hardware movement, Anderson.
Yeah, Commissioner Ward, thank you. Ben Wiedemann as well will continue to go to both of you throughout this evening. Joining me now is former Israeli ambassador to the UN and Knesset member Danny Danon. Ambassador, I appreciate you being with us. You heard President Biden's speech. You probably heard Jake Sullivan as well. President Biden saying that the U.S. is offering assistance to Israel to try to negotiate release of hostages. First of all, what did you make of President Biden's statements, the support that the U.S. is now offering?
Anderson, we are very grateful for the words of President Biden. It was a remarkable and emotional speech, and I think it was needed at the time where we are today, where we are still counting the number of victims. We are burying our friends. To see the love and the support, we appreciate that, and we believe that President Biden, he actually intends to stand behind his words and to support Israel. We don't expect to see American troops on the ground, but to have the moral support, the moral clarity. The words he said were very strong, and we appreciate that.
President Biden did not, as Clarissa pointed out, urge restraint. He talked about operating under the rules of war, which is what democracy is supposed to do. He also warned other countries not to try to exploit the crisis. How concerned are you about the potential expansion of this as a regional conflict, the involvement of potentially of Hezbollah and others?
Our goal is to punish Hamas, to destroy Hamas, to eliminate Hamas. That is the goal of the war we declared. Today we saw horrible pictures of babies that were handcuffed and burned alive. Things we never saw since the days of the Holocaust. So we are focused on punishing Hamas, period. We will hunt them down, and they will pay a heavy price for what they did. We have no intention to start a cycle with Hezbollah in the north or anyone else. But if someone will try our resilience, we will react. We are ready for that. We called enough reserve troops. just in case somebody will try to test us again.
Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, was asked and talked about diplomatic efforts to try to figure out something for civilians in Gaza, someplace for them to be able to go to escape to. Is that possible at all?
Well, first, we never target the civilian population, unlike Hamas, which commits a double war crime. They target civilians and then cowardly they go and hide behind civilians and use them as human shields. We don't want to have any civilian casualties. So what we do, we actually try to encourage the population to move out. And I heard your discussion earlier. Gaza is big enough to move out. If we're targeting a neighborhood where we know that we have headquarters of Hamas, we messages to the population to get out of this area, to move south to a different location, and we hope that they will do that. And I will take this opportunity to call to the people in Gaza to move away from Hamas headquarters, from Hamas militants, because we are coming to get them. We will come from the sea, from the air, from the land. We will come, we will find them, and we will kill them.
Ambassador Danny Danone, I appreciate your time. Thank you. Our special coverage continues after a quick break. Stay with us.
And reached a hospital in Jerusalem and was pronounced dead on arrival.
I'm so sorry for your loss. Your son sounds like such an extraordinary young man, and there are so many people who will be glad to hear his story and know that he helped save their lives as well. Yitzhar Shai, you buried your son today, and thank you for spending time with us on this awful day.
Thank you for having me here and paying some further tribute to our family, to Yaron's memory.
Yitzhar Shai, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anderson Cooper in Tel Aviv, alongside Boris Sanchez in Washington. The lead with Jake Tapper starts now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we start this hour with breaking news. The White House says 20 or more Americans are missing in Israel. This is in addition to the 14 Americans killed. This is after the terrorist attacks carried out by Hamas. U.S. officials say it's not clear if all of these 20 Americans missing are being held hostage, just that as of now, they are currently unaccounted for. This announcement came just minutes ago after a speech by President Biden, where he pledged unwavering support for Israel against what he called, quote, the pure, unadulterated evil, unquote, of Hamas.
Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that.
This afternoon we learned that evil of Hamas has resulted in more than 1,000 deaths in Israel so far, mostly of civilians. The death toll also tragically includes a number of civilians from the town of Kfar Aza in southern Israel. Israel's military says Hamas killed civilians in the town, slaughtered them. It's a scene one Israeli general described as worse than anything he has seen in his 40-year career.
I heard during my childhood about the pogrom in Europe and the Holocaust, of course. All my family came from Europe and they are survivors, etc., etc. I never think that I would see in my eyes picture and things like this.
Fighting has erupted in recent hours as the sun began to set over the Middle East. CNN teams on the ground in the Israeli town of Ashkelon, which is north of Gaza on the coast of the Mediterranean, captured this video of what they described as a relentless tempo of rockets fired by Hamas into Israel, followed by loud booms of Israel's Iron Dome self-defense system. And drone video from over Gaza earlier today shows the scale of the destruction from Israel's airstrikes against Gaza. Palestinian authorities say homes, schools, and hospitals have been hit by the IDF, and more than 100,000 residents of Gaza have been displaced. CNN's Clarissa Ward is in Ashkelon, Israel, just a few miles north of that border with Gaza. from where you are, Clarissa. You could see Hamas pummeling the city with rockets all day. It was so close to you, in fact, it damaged your car.
That's right, Jake. We had seen on Hamas's Telegram channel that they were warning people to leave the city by 5 p.m. We got here just about 5 minutes before that, and right at the top of the hour, a relentless bombardment began. That basically continued on and off for several hours. At a certain point, I think we lost count of the number of times that the sirens went off. You would hear the missiles, and you would hear, of course, the Iron Dome intercepting the vast majority of those missiles. It's always very difficult to get a precise sense of how many are intercepted versus how many make landfall, but there seems to be a consensus here, at least, that while the residents of Ashkelon are no strangers to rocket fire, while they have shelters on every floor of every hotel and public buildings, they haven't really seen anything on the scale of this kind of a sustained bombardment. So very much a sense of tension here on the ground in Ashkelon, and indeed throughout many of these cities that are near to the border, where the rocket fire has been continuing. Of course, on the other side of the border in Gaza, it has also been a brutal day, continued bombardment. The death toll there climbing now above 800 people, and no sense that any of this is going to stop. In fact, quite the opposite. It appears, from what we've heard from President Biden, from what we heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, that the specter of a ground invasion is entirely possible, if not likely, Jake.
All right, Clarissa Ward in Ashkelon, Israel, thank you so much. At least 900 people have been killed in Gaza since Saturday, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Buildings have been flattened, food and water cut off. More bodies pulled from the rubble today. This is after Israel fired at least 200 rockets overnight into the densely populated area in retaliation for the atrocities committed by Hamas over the weekend. As CNN's Ben Wiedemann reports, top Israeli military leaders say it's nearly impossible to determine if they're striking Hamas or innocent civilians, as Hamas embeds itself within the Palestinian population.
The Gaza City neighborhood, once known as El Rimel, the Sands, reduced to ashes. Its residents retrieve what they can, which isn't much. Israel continues to pound the strip, targeting, it says, Hamas infrastructure. Residents in shock are asking why. I got married this year, says Yahya Lahuel. What did I do? What have we done? You destroyed an entire neighborhood. He says he never fired a rocket. In this, one of the most densely populated patches of land on Earth, bombs crashing into crowded neighborhoods rarely differentiate between fighter and civilian. The death toll rises by the hour, while Gaza's hospitals are overwhelmed with the wounded, including infants. Around 40% of the population of Gaza is under the age of 15, according to the CIA. The Information Ministry in Gaza reports that nearly 170 buildings have been destroyed and more than 12,000 residences damaged. Tens of thousands have fled their homes, seeking refuge in UN schools converting into shelters. An oven in this bakery in Gaza City is shut down. Many of the shelves empty. Life here was already difficult, and now the future looks bleaker than ever. Gaza will take 5 years to raise its head after this, says Wahiba Sirsawi. And after 5 years, there will be 2 or 3 more wars. It's a catastrophe. And amidst all this, somewhere in Gaza, only Hamas knows where, are more than 100 Israeli captives, fates unknown. Tuesday afternoon, Israel struck Gaza's only port, used principally by fishermen. While at the same time, Hamas unleashed a massive volley of rockets toward Ashkelon. The abyss approaches. And this evening we heard from a spokesman for the Israeli military who says that several rockets were fired from Syria into the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, landing in open territory. He said that the Israeli forces responded to the source of that rocket fire with mortars and artillery. Jake?
Ben Wiedemann in Jerusalem for us. Thank you. The Hamas terrorist attack over the weekend was followed by a promise by the Israeli military of swift and devastating retaliation and a warning to Gaza residents to leave any area near Hamas, which would be quite difficult since Hamas is embedded within the Palestinian population in Gaza. On Saturday night, I asked a spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces just where Gazans are supposed to go, given the closed-off border that has made Gaza, in the words of a former British Prime Minister, essentially an open-air prison. Here's his response.
That they should go south, they can go towards the shore, and they can be in locations that are not close to Hamas facilities.
More than 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza. About half of those are children. Let's bring in Haneen Okal. She's a Palestinian American from Union County, New Jersey. She is currently stuck in Gaza City with her 3 children. They are 8, 2, and a 2-month-old. They cannot get out. Thank you so much for joining us. Has the U.S. Embassy been able to give you any help to get out?
Hi, how are you? Yes, we tried to contact the U.S. Embassy so many times. Unfortunately, they couldn't help us at all. I contacted them through the phone, via email, I texted, and I called different numbers, but nobody, I couldn't hear back from any. They said that we're gonna call you back within 24 hours or so on, couple hours, but they couldn't at all call us, or we didn't get any information from them. I submitted a form through the website, but that didn't work as well. And I don't know with what happened with areas crossing border and what's happening with the Rafah border. I don't know if we're gonna make it, but I am absolutely looking forward to the help of the U.S. Embassy. We are all here feeling abandoned, and we're feeling that we're left alone. So we're really looking for the U.S. Embassy to help the U.S. citizens who are living in Gaza.
That was just an Israeli airstrike that we just heard?
Yes.
That was just an Israeli airstrike that we just heard?
A what?
That we just heard a sound, like a bomb or a missile. Is that what we just heard?
Yes. That's happening 24 hours. All time, they're bombing all around, from south to north, to the center of Gaza, everywhere. Bombing is everywhere.
Your kids, how are they doing with that?
It's terrible. My kids are very scared and they're afraid of what's going on. I have to explain all the time. I have to calm them down and trying to make them feel comfortable, safe, and trying to make them busy with other things so they can't feel afraid or scared. But like they are, like what happened with me, for example, today, I was trying to get out from Gaza. I was going to Rafah border, and while we were going there, we tried multiple ways to get out of Gaza, going to Rafah to the south. We couldn't make it at all, so my son saw all the locations, destroyed his favorite places. He was shocked with what he saw. So we had to see all that, and we had to go through what we say. Okay. So it was like, you're going to death. Yes.
There needs to be a way for you to get out. I mean, you're not Hamas. You're an innocent person, and you have 3 kids. You need to be able to get out. You heard earlier the suggestions from the IDF spokesman I spoke with Saturday night. Where are innocent Palestinians supposed to go? He said you can go to the south, you can go to the shore. Is that at all realistic? We just heard about your attempt to go to the border crossing in the south, and that didn't work. Is there anywhere for you to go to escape this barrage of missiles?
No, we tried everywhere, they say go to the shore, and then they bomb the shore next day. They say go to the north, and then they bomb the north areas next day. Like everywhere, they're bombing everywhere. So no place is safe here in Gaza Strip, and it's just terrible and very, very, very hard to explain because they're bombing everywhere.
Well, I hope
It's
the
not
White
just a place or like a place that is close to Hamas. They're bombing places that are not related to Hamas too, like I don't know, everywhere.
Haneen Okal, we have your number. I know that the White House watches this show. The White House can call me, and we will put them in touch with you. You and your kids need to get out safe, and you need to get out safe as soon as is humanly possible. Please stay safe. Stay in touch with us. We're going to do everything we can to help you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And we will make sure that the White House gets that information, whether they're watching or not. So, what could an Israeli ground invasion into Gaza look like? Well, Israel has saturated its southern border with troops and tanks and called up more than 300,000 reservists to fight. Where that operation stands right now, that's next.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
My mental health was much better, but I struggled with uncontrollable movements called TD, tardive dyskinesia. TD can be caused by some mental health meds.
And it's unlikely to improve without treatment. I felt like my movements were in the spotlight.
#1 prescribed Ingrezza is the only TD treatment for adults that's always one pill once daily. Ingrezza 80 milligram is proven to reduce TD movements in 7 out of 10 people. People taking Ingrezza can stay on most mental health meds. Ingrezza can cause depression, suicidal thoughts, or actions in patients with Huntington's disease. Pay close attention to and call your doctor if you become depressed, have sudden changes in mood, behaviors, feelings, or have thoughts of suicide. Don't take Ingrezza if you're allergic to its ingredients. Ingrezza may cause serious side effects, including angioedema, potential heart rhythm problems, and abnormal movements. Report fevers, stiff muscles, or problems thinking, as these may be life-threatening. Sleepiness is the most common side effect.
It's nice. People focus more on me.
Ask your doctor about #1 prescribed once daily Ingrezza.
Some things are good to know, like where to find the cheapest gas in town and which supermarket gives you the most bang for your buck. Something else that's good to know? If you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be able to get more health care benefits through a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan. Call now to see if there's a plan in your area and to see if you qualify. All of these plans include doctor, hospital, and prescription drug coverage in one convenient plan. From Humana, a company with over 60 years of experience in the healthcare industry. You'll have lots of doctors and specialists to choose from. And if you have Medicare and Medicaid, a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan can give you other important benefits. All of these plans include coverage for dental, with 2 free cleanings a year, plus fillings and a yearly exam. Vision, including eye exams and a yearly allowance for eyewear. And hearing benefits, including routine hearing exams and coverage for hearing aids, plus an allowance to help pay for essentials like eligible groceries, utilities, and rent, even over-the-counter items. And whatever you don't spend gets carried over to the next month. Best of all, you'll pay nothing for covered prescriptions all year long, even the brand name ones, and $0 for routine vaccines, including shingles, at in-network retail pharmacies. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call now to see if there's a plan in your area that could give you extra benefits, including coverage for prescription drugs, plus dental, vision, and hearing, and more. A knowledgeable, licensed Humana sales agent will walk you through your options, and if you're eligible and there's a plan in your area, help you enroll over the phone. Call today, and we'll also send this free guide. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
Need to get your windshield fixed? SafeLight makes it easy. You can schedule it in just a few clicks, and we'll come to you with a replacement you can trust. It's great. Get service on your time. Schedule now.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace.
Tens of thousands of Israeli troops are on the move as Israel prepares for a possible ground invasion into Gaza. In total, more than 300,000 Israeli troops have already been called up to fight, to retaliate against the Hamas terrorist attack over the weekend. CNN's Jeremy Diamond is in Ashdod, Israel, which is north of the Gaza border, tracking the largest mobilization in Israel's history on such short notice.
Militants infiltrated Israel. Israeli forces are still fighting to eliminate the threat.
We are here right outside of the Israeli town of Mifalsim, where we have been hearing repeated exchanges of gunfire over the last 10 minutes or so. These exchanges, we haven't seen who exactly they are between, but we do know that Israeli forces have been continuing to try and clear some of these Israeli towns around the Gaza Strip from those Hamas militants.
The IDF later confirming they killed 2 Hamas terrorists in the battle. But minutes after it ended, Israeli defense forces rushing a casualty into an ambulance.
Okay, we're going.
But the soundtrack to life in most Israeli communities around the Gaza Strip today wasn't gunfire, but rockets. In Sderot, the booms punctuate the stillness of the day.
We're just come into a shelter here where we can take cover from these Iron Dome interceptions, and of course they're intercepting active rockets coming in from Gaza. The booms are very loud, they are directly overhead.
20 minutes later, another barrage of rockets headed for the city of Ashkelon.
All right, we're in the city of Sderot, where we can now see that barrage that Hamas promised at 5 p.m. Appearing to head over in the direction of Ashkelon. Now that is exactly where Hamas officials said about an hour ago that they would fire rockets in that direction.
But there is also another sound in towns like Sderot. Israeli troops and reservists mobilizing to the Gaza front. Part of a massive call-up of more than 300,000 reserve troops. Preparations for a potential ground invasion of Gaza. For some, this moment feels different.
When we came in with a concept of full control, this one started with much more obviously confusion and the playing field is different. That's certainly. But I think in the last 2 days the momentum has shifted.
The entire country is springing into action. Those out of uniform bringing food and supplies to troops. After days of tragedy, also a sense of resilience.
I'm not afraid at all, she said. When it will be my time, it will be my time. NJ, driving through these towns bordering the Gaza Strip, one thing is clear, that the situation right now is far from stable, and it could get much, much worse. As we drove through these towns, we continually have this kind of eerie sense of calm, punctuated only by those sirens here on the Israeli side, the rockets, and also, as we are hearing tonight, that steady rumble of Israeli airstrikes hitting the Gaza Strip. But the question is, what is going to come next? 300,000, more than 300,000 Israeli reservists have been called up, one of the largest mobilizations in Israel's history. Most folks here seem to think that a ground invasion is imminent, but Israeli officials have yet to actually confirm that. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a speech last night to the Israeli public, made clear that he plans to take unprecedented action against Hamas, but he has yet to take an actual decision or give an order.
today, who says that they have heard nothing from Zaghi since Saturday morning. His father has flown in from the US to try and elicit some sort of information about what is going on with his son, and he is pleading for help from both the Israeli and the US governments. Have a listen to what he told me.
The United States administration and its various services have relationships in the world with countries that Israel does not. And it could be helpful for the United States in its various parts to engage with those friends, those acquaintances, to help in negotiate in some way, secure the release, or at least get solid information. My children and grandchildren who were on the kibbutz, so Sagi's young family and another young family, experienced a living hell for the better part of 20 hours. These are young children, young men and women who cannot be anything other than traumatized by what they witnessed. My job now as a parent is to try to put the pieces back together.
Put the pieces back together, he said, is the job that he has now. He also feels as a father that he has a responsibility to do whatever it takes to try and get his son released. Jake, that was a community of 400, and as far as Jonathan knows, there are only 160 survivors of that massacre there on Saturday morning. The fourth family member, let me just tell you, that we heard from today was the father, Ruby, of a boy called Itai, who is 19 years old, and he is a reservist in the IDF, and he was down on the border, hasn't been heard of since Saturday as well. So members of four families, four individuals who have been taken, presumed to be taken hostage by Hamas, and they just need help. They have heard nothing from either, or they certainly hadn't, when I spoke to them this afternoon, from either the Israeli or US governments. Jake?
And Becky, yesterday you were at a hospital in Tel Aviv, already overwhelmed. How are they prepared to treat any additional casualties because, after a potential ground incursion?
Well, the director of that hospital told me that he'd never seen anything like this. This is the biggest hospital in Israel. It's the hospital in Tel Aviv, and it's generally where you'll get the most serious victims coming, and that is exactly what has happened this time. From so many of the incidents in this massacre, mostly people were dealt with on the site first, when eventually the army got to them, and that was some 10, 12, 15 hours in, and then evacuated to this hospital. He said he expects to see 3, 4, 5 times the numbers that he is currently seeing at present. He said the difference between what they're seeing now and what they've seen in conflicts in the past here, and of course there have been numerous conflicts here in the past, is that generally in the past the serious injuries and the burns and the gunshot wounds that they've seen are from soldiers. Unfortunately, this time it is civilians and soldiers, and they are not overwhelmed. They can cope at this point, but clearly he is very concerned about the prospect of a ground incursion and what will happen, what sort of price will be paid by the people there in Gaza, both these hostages potentially and civilians.
Becky Anderson, thank you so much. Gaza is coming up on the midnight hour. We're monitoring the night sky there, where once again sporadic explosions have sent large plumes of smoke up. Daylight might reveal what was hit. How should the U.S. respond to this brutal war? We're going to talk with a member of Congress who was a Middle East analyst for the CIA. Stay with us.
He hits his mark center stage and is crushed by a baby grand piano.
You're replacing me? Customize and save with Liberty Bibbity.
He doesn't even have a mustache.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Meet Noodles. She's part short hair and part ninja. Meet the Bissell Crosswave Hydro Steam. It's part vacuum, mop, steamer, and ninja nemesis. Bissell, a new breed of clean.
Feeling sluggish or weighed down? Could be a sign you're not getting enough daily fiber. Metamucil capsules can help. Psyllium fiber gels to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down, promoting digestive health for a better you. Metamucil capsules, an easy way to get more daily fiber.
Frustrated by skin tags? Dr. Scholl's has the breakthrough you've been waiting for. The first FDA-cleared at-home skin tag remover, clinically proven to remove skin tags safely in as little as one treatment.
Diabetes can serve up a lot of questions, like what is your glucose and can you have more carbs? Before you decide, with the Freestyle Libre 2 system, know your glucose level and where it's headed, no finger sticks needed. Manage your diabetes with more confidence and lower your A1C. The #1 doctor-prescribed CGM, Freestyle Libre 2. Try it for free at freestylelibre.us.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Struggling with the highs and lows of bipolar 1? Ask about Vraylar. Because you are greater than your bipolar 1. And you can help take control of your symptoms with Vraylar. Some medicines only treat the lows or highs. Vraylar treats depressive, acute manic, and mixed episodes of bipolar 1 in adults. Proven full-spectrum relief for all bipolar 1 symptoms. And in Vraylar clinical studies, most saw no substantial impact on weight. Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor about unusual changes in behavior or suicidal thoughts. Antidepressants can increase these in children and young adults. Report fever, stiff muscles or confusion, which may mean a life-threatening reaction, or uncontrollable muscle movements, which may be permanent. High blood sugar, which can lead to coma or death, weight gain, and high cholesterol may occur. Movement dysfunction and restlessness are common side effects. Sleepiness and stomach issues are also common. Side effects may not appear for several weeks. Ask about Vraylar and learn how AbbVie could help you save.
It's a good day to cough. Oh no. Bye-bye, cough.
Later chest congestion. Hello, 12 hours of relief.
12 hours? Okay, not coughing at yoga. Antiquing, not coughing. Not coughing at the movies? Hashtag still not coughing?
Mucinex DM gives you 12 hours of relief from chest congestion in any type of cough, day or night. It's not cough season. It's always comeback season.
To give your teeth a dentist clean feeling, start with a round brush head. Add power, and you've got Oral-B. Round cleans better by surrounding each tooth to remove 100% more plaque for a superior clean. Oral-B, brush like a pro.
Our future will demand more energy than ever, and with innovations in natural gas and oil, America can deliver. But Washington keeps pushing extreme policies that limit America's energy. Their plan? Restrict oil and natural gas produced in America. Government mandates for how we fuel our cars and cook our food. A future where energy could be less reliable and more expensive. Tell Washington, stop the extreme policies and let American energy deliver.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We only represent mesothelioma victims and their families. Call for a free book.
Call 800-282-4444 or go to Mesobook.com.
And we're back with our world lead. As if it needs to be said, Saturday was the deadliest day for Jews in the world since the Holocaust. Since then. And at least 1,000 people have been killed in the Hamas attacks, mostly civilian. Among them, 14 Americans as of now. The U.S. State Department says it is in contact with many Americans still stuck in Israel and wanting to get out. Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan is with me. She's on the Armed Services Committee, and she used to be a Middle East analyst in the CIA. Thanks so much for being here. Your office has gotten calls and texts about Americans trying to get out of Israel, trying to get out of Palestinian territories. I don't know if you saw earlier, but we were talking to a Palestinian-American woman in Gaza trying to desperately get out. So far, the American government has not particularly been helpful. There really isn't a way to get out of Gaza. What are you hearing from your constituents, and how concerned are you about their safety?
Well, I mean, I think there are more American passport holders in Israel than almost any other country in the world, maybe more than any country in the world. So getting those American passport holders out if they want to come out is a huge endeavor. We know that American carriers aren't leaving from Ben Gurion Airport. We've had some other international flights canceled today. I've been helping people over the Jordanian border, over land, and the Jordanian government has been amazing at helping to facilitate that. Church groups, individual students, parents, it's just been a huge effort, and I know every member of Congress is dealing with that same onslaught of requests.
Can Egypt help at all with the Palestinian Americans stuck in the Gaza Strip? Because
certainly, I think Israel will have to be a part of that conversation, and I don't know where they stand on that, but certainly that is a border area, yes.
So you have lived in Israel, is that right?
Lived in Israel, lived in Jordan, yeah.
When you were with the CIA?
No.
No, it's just in different times of your life. When the attack happened, the Israeli Defense Forces seem to have been mainly located in the West Bank or at home. Does this surprise you how much Israel was caught off guard and how slowly the rescues came for Israelis? Could more lives have been saved if troops weren't so positioned in the West Bank?
Well, look, we're going to have a lot of time to go over how an intelligence failure like this happened. Think about our 9/11 Commission. Think about getting these senior members, experienced, bipartisan group together to take a deep look at this. They're going to have to do that same thing. They did the same thing after the 1973 war when they were caught off guard. A big sort of with Supreme Court justices and everything. So they will have plenty of time. But obviously, it's a failure, and they're going to have to grapple with this. One thing was to not know it was coming, not to have human intelligence sources embedded with Hamas to sort of tip off the Israelis, which is kind of the gold standard for the intelligence community, not to have signals intelligence of what they were saying to each other across telephones, across computers, walkie-talkies, whatever. But then there was the second conversation about their military preparedness. Were they overcommitted on the West Bank side? Were they too focused that way and not on Gaza? All of those things are going to have to be...
And why they were there also.
And why, right?
Protecting the settlers who were...
I think that's going to be a very serious question for the Israeli government. But there's going to be plenty of time for that. I think right now, people are still in shock. People are still finding out today, including members of my own staff, if they have friends and loved ones and cousins who are missing, who are, injured. And so I think that the time will come for that, and it will be a serious, groundbreaking thing for the Israeli government to deal with that.
So you have a Democratic colleague from Michigan, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She's the first Palestinian American woman to ever serve in Congress, and she released a statement that said, quote, "I grieve the Palestinian and Israeli lives lost. The path to peace must include lifting the blockade, ending the occupation, and dismantling the apartheid system that creates the suffocating, dehumanizing conditions that can lead to resistance. As long as our country provides billions in unconditional funding to support the apartheid government, this heartbreaking cycle of violence will continue." What was your reaction when you read Congresswoman Tlaib's statement?
Well, first of all, I handle my issues with other members of Congress privately, right? I have lots of private conversations. But I think for me, it shouldn't be hard to condemn terrorists and terrorism, right? And that doesn't mean you don't have beef with the Israeli government, right? Lots of people, we saw a fifth of the Israeli population had beef with the Israeli government. But it should be easy, especially with the details coming out, to condemn terrorism and terrorists. And Hamas is a terrorist organization. They do not represent all Palestinians. We shouldn't connect those two. So to me, I think that was the hardest part, not just about that statement, but a number of statements that have come out from organizations and individuals. I don't question whether someone has the right to be angry at the Israeli government. I question their inability to condemn grievous violence, and that's what I think has been difficult.
There does seem to be, look, we've spent a lot of time during the Trump years looking at anti-Semitism on the right. These last few days have been a real eye-opening period for a lot of people, a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives, in terms of anti-Semitism on the left. A lot of people who seem more shocked at dehumanizing language used by world leaders to describe Hamas than what Hamas actually perpetrated on Saturday.
Yeah, look, anti-Semitism should be stamped out wherever it is, on the right or on the left. And we shouldn't look more glowingly on it if it comes from our side, right? So Republicans need to strongly condemn the grievous anti-Semitism that I've seen on their side, and we need to absolutely go after anti-Semitism on the left. and that it should just be a standard thing and not a political thing, whether you condemn it or not.
Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, thank you so much. For days now, we've heard how Hamas stormed into that music festival Saturday and killed hundreds of people, raping people as well, raping women. My next guest was there. There's also some new video showing the callous, cold-hearted actions of the terrorists there. Stay with us.
Stars Play in Abu Dhabi is the region's leading streaming service that brings you the magic of films and the excitement of sports to your favorite device, be it a television or your mobile phone. With a business like ours, we need a range of talent, from technology as well as creative. We found Abu Dhabi to be our hub for accessing that type of talent.
A lot of people need to replace their windows or patio doors, but they put it off because they think it'll be too expensive. Hi, I'm Ann Romer. I'm here with Michael Smith from Renewal by Andersen. You really work with the customers to find affordable solutions.
We do, Ann. We're the replacement window division of Andersen, one of the largest window manufacturers in North America. So we can usually offer our customers larger discounts and better financing than smaller companies or contractors.
Other window companies don't offer your same window and door installation method.
Our installers have installed thousands of windows. Our windows are manufactured to precisely fit your specific window openings. Being custom built also means if you have any beautiful trim that you'd like to keep, we can often install your windows without impacting that trim. You won't get this with most vinyl windows.
And you offer a free window and patio door diagnosis?
We do. We'll come to your home and assess your current windows, show you where you might be losing energy, and take measurements. Then we'll leave you with an exact price quote that's good for an entire year.
So you're not a high-pressure company?
My background is in home remodeling as a carpenter. I've seen every window problem out there. So now I just want to help homeowners make their homes more beautiful and comfortable with the right window.
And your patio doors are really gorgeous.
They are. And they're engineered to easily open and close for years. And with multiple locking points on our patio doors, they provide even greater security.
That is so great to hear, Michael. Thank you.
Before October 31st, buy one window, patio door, or entry door and get the next one 40% off. That's 40% off with a minimum purchase of 4. And our financing can help make this project more affordable with zero money down, 0 monthly payments, and 0 interest for 1 year. This offer ends October 31st. For a free appointment with Renewal by Andersen, call 1-800-501-1400. That's 1-800-501-1400.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Now look at them arcing up. This is the defensive missile system.
The worst single day in Israel's history since 1948.
We have just had a massive barrage of rockets coming in here.
I'm so sorry. It's okay. I'm so guilty.
And that pain is echoed thousands of families all across this country. Our continuing coverage of the conflict here in Israel.
Hey there, stop changing channels. I'm out here in the woods, and you gotta see this. It's the new Patriot Power Generator 2000X, a solar generator worth its weight in gold when your power goes out, with double the capacity and expandable, so you can run your fridge even longer. It's fume-free, safe to use inside, and never needs gas, ever. Plus, you'll get this solar panel free. Go to 4patriots.com and do it now. Get your solar generator with free shipping and free panel at 4patriots.com.
They say it's the journey, not the destination that matters most. A new adventure awaits. A collection of unforgettable moments where quality and comfort build confidence. Explore BuiltBasics.com now.
We just shipped our 1,000th monthly coffee subscription box, so we're sending custom thank you gifts to our team. Our custom ink rep is just as excited as we are and knows what great quality products to get. Celebrate your milestones with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
The whole story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 8 on CNN.
Of the 1,000 people killed in the terrorist attacks by Hamas, more than 260 were at the Nova Music Festival on Saturday. Some were killed at point-blank range. Their belongings were looted. Their actions seen in a car's dash camera parked at the festival. That video was obtained by CNN today. Amit Musai was at the festival when it came under fire, and he joins us now. Amit,
hello, good afternoon, Jake.
Words fail. I'm so sorry you went through this. I'm glad you were okay. Can you tell us what happened that morning?
So me and three of my friends, we were at the music festival, which is very close to the border with Gaza. Towards 6:30 a.m. while we were dancing on the dance floor, the music suddenly stopped. We thought it's something with electricity, but then we realized that they were shooting rockets at us from Gaza. We tried to find a shelter. There is no safe zone, as this was an open space. We were basically in the desert with some eucalyptus trees. We lied on the ground and tried to find shelter, but we realized that there is no way to find shelter in such a great open area. While the security personnel on the festival started to aim us to leave the space and to start to escape, me and my friends were probably the first group of people who realized we need to go into our vehicles to start the engines and to flee out. Now, this was a festival attended by thousands of people. 3,500 people were there, not just Israelis, as this festival was also inviting a lot of global guests. It was in a collaboration with the Brazilian festival, so there were a lot of foreign people attending. Many of them didn't know even what to do. They didn't even understand what is happening. As us Israelis, we are kind of used to rocket attacks on Israel, so we know what we should do. Anyways, me and three of my friends, we met by our camping site, and we started to run towards our car. Actually, my car is quite a new vehicle. I'm a tour guide. It's a four-wheel drive that I'm using to drive my tourists from place to place. And this vehicle failed to start, which later on possibly saved me from something else. So we were basically escaping from the rocket attack, and we've made our way out. So we had to drive a bit not on the paved roads, and we found a way out towards the roads in the Gaza envelope area. While my friends asked me where I'm aiming towards, I told them I'm aiming away. So if rockets are coming from southwest, which is the location of Gaza on the map of Israel, I'm driving to northeast towards the rising sun. And over there we found, after maybe 10 or 15 minutes drive, while trying to call to our friends which were on their way, they told us that they are in a shelter, but there are shootings. Now, we didn't realize yet that those shootings were not rockets. They were meaning gun shootings.
Right, because of
as we were making our way
on
to
the
find
ground,
some shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we found a way towards a shelter, towards a gas station and a coffee place, which is a building, and this is where you want to hide by. You want to hide by a wall that can protect you. En route, we saw a GMC Savannah, so it's a white truck, and we saw that all the windows were shattered. We didn't even realize what just happened to this car. I imagined that this car was hit by a rocket. Later in time, after realizing what really happened at the festival, we understood that most likely one of those pickup trucks that possibly you have videos of that were carrying terrorists from the Gaza Strip into Israel, they were driving on that road possibly a minute or two before we took this road, and they shot down the vehicle and all the people that were there. Possibly they even managed to kidnap some of the people, because we saw only one body, and it was not the driver. It was the driver's passenger.
And I know, I mean, I know that you have three daughters, and one of your daughters, her friend is missing, was kidnapped.
So we were expecting friends to join us, and they had not been yet in the festival. They found shelter in a place very close to one of the settlements in the Gaza envelope, and unfortunately they were encountered terrorists, most likely from a blank distance, and those two friends, they are my best friends, and they are the parents of my daughter's besties. So I have a 10 years old, they have a 10 years old, I have an 8 years old, they have an 8 years old, and they are the best friends. They are those two friends of mine that are gone missing. We don't know what happened to them. We just found their vehicle. I think it was 2 days ago in the morning. We found their vehicle. We probably have videos of them. All right. So I just want to emphasize that the attack was like the attacks that you understand and know, like ISIS.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were butchering people, and they were abusing the bodies of people. Those are not people. Those are not animals. Those are monsters.
Yeah.
And they are representing all the people that are in the Gaza Strip. This is the ruling entity in Gaza.
I mean, Musai, I'm so sorry you went through that, and it's so horrible. And I hope that you hear from your friends soon. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you very much, and I hope America will continue to support us.
We'll be right back.
It's easy to get lost in investment research. Introducing JP Morgan Personal Advisors.
Hey, David.
Connect with an advisor to create your personalized plan.
Let's find the right investments for your goals.
Okay, great.
JP Morgan Wealth Management.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
We've got questions about Medicare plans.
Well, we've got a lot of answers. How can I help?
Well, for starters, do you have a Medicare plan I can actually afford?
How about a plan with a $0 monthly premium?
Well, that's a great start. What other benefits can we get?
Things like dental, vision, and hearing. But let me help you pick the plan that's right for you.
Ooh.
Don't wait. Call 1-888-65-Aetna to get answers to your questions and pick a plan that's right for you. And let's make healthier happen together.
Your heart is the beat of life. If you have heart failure, entrust your heart to Entresto. Entresto helps improve your heart's ability to pump blood to the body. Don't take Entresto if pregnant. It can cause harm or death to an unborn baby. And don't take Entresto with an ACE inhibitor or aliskiren, or if you've had angioedema with an ACE or ARB. The most serious side effects are angioedema, low blood pressure, kidney problems, or high blood potassium. Ask your doctor if Entresto is right for you.
They get it. They know how it works. And more importantly, it works for them.
I don't have any anxiety about money anymore. I don't have to worry about a mortgage payment every month. It allowed me to live in my home and not have to pay payments.
If you're 62 or older and own your home, you can access your equity to improve your lifestyle. A reverse mortgage loan eliminates your monthly mortgage payments and puts tax-free cash in your pocket. Call 800-719-5127.
It was the best thing I've ever done. And
really?
Yes, without a doubt.
Just like these folks, AAG can show you how a reverse mortgage loan uses your built-up home equity to give you tax-free cash.
It's a good thing.
Why don't you get the facts like these folks did?
Call right now to receive your free no-obligation info kit. Call 800-719-5127. 800-719-5127.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
These are the faces. Face the reality.
You want to bring it every single night.
Face the opponent.
With a hand in his face.
And become the face of the game.
generations, Asuyus has been the small-town gem of the Okanagan and the home of Canada's warmest welcome. You can help keep it that way. Visit and see for yourself. We're home to terrific holiday adventures for everyone. Relax, dine, shop, and explore. Through your support of local business and by sharing your experiences, Asuyus will continue to thrive for generations to come. Plan your visit today at destinationasuyus.com.
2023 brand new uncirculated 99.9% pure silver Morgan dollar, but with limited quantities. You must call now to learn more. 1-800-473-1745 plus. You'll receive a free bonus Patriots pack, new and improved, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-473-1745 to secure your new 2023 Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. 1-800-473-1745 now.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and this is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. The dysfunction among Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives has now taken on global significance because of the crisis in the Middle East. So we are, in this hour, going to focus a bit on House Republicans meeting at this hour. They are hoping to get one step closer to deciding who will become their next speaker, the individual who runs the House of Representatives. Without a speaker, no legislation can be passed, including any legislation that might address the growing crisis on the ground in Israel. So we are following that story, but we are going to begin today in the Middle East, where at least 1,000 people have been killed in the Hamas attacks on Israel, most of them civilians. President Biden confirming today that 14 of them were Americans. The White House says 20 additional Americans are still missing, and that number might not necessarily reflect the number of American hostages. It's just 20 Americans who are not accounted for right now. Today, Israel is carrying out airstrikes on the Gaza port in retaliation. As we're learning, Israel perhaps not only missed signs of an attack, they may have been tricked. Reuters is reporting that for 2 years, Hamas went to great lengths to try to convince Israel that Hamas was so tired of war that it would be placated by economic incentives to Gazan workers. But according to the report, it was all an elaborate front. Behind the scenes, the group's fighters were being trained and drilled for this extensive attack, a modern-day version of the haversack ruse during the Brits' Palestine campaign of World War I, where the British dropped a sack filled with fake plans meant to deceive the Turks into believing that Gaza was its main target when it was not, considered one of the greatest wartime deceptions in military history, and a lesson apparently not learned well enough. But the images coming out of Israel today do not show a typical war. They show potential war crimes. This is what Hamas did to the small town of Kfar Aza. One IDF official telling CNN that they slaughtered Israeli civilians. They beheaded people. A grim reminder of the last time this many Jews were killed in a single day. That was during the Holocaust. This story is now just beginning, and while we do not know how it will end, the world can see of what Hamas is capable, whether it is in that small town or at that music festival where attendees were hiding in bomb shelters where they were executed by hand grenades and guns. CNN's Aaron Burnett just arrived in Tel Aviv this morning, and Aaron, back and forth strikes have led to another night of unease across Israel and Gaza. Ashkelon was a major target of Hamas today, and now we're learning rockets were launched tonight from Syria into Israeli territory, which of course is just adding to the already volatile situation.
Yeah. All right, Jake, when they talk about the worry about this expanding, the war expanding, and also expanding within Israel to multiple fronts, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, are saying that there were rockets fired from Syrian territory to Israeli territory. They don't say how many, they don't say whether there were any injuries, but they said that happened today, and of course it added as over the past 24 hours, there have been skirmishes with Hezbollah forces up in the north, up by Lebanon, right, and then down, of course, by Gaza. You had today a barrage of rockets. You talk about Ashkelon, and that is exactly what we saw here in the early hours of the evening. The sky lit up. The Iron Dome, of course, did protect. Very few, if any, broke through. We don't hear about any injuries, but it was a barrage, and Hamas had said 5 o'clock local time they're going to strike Ashkelon with rockets, and they did exactly that. The other thing I will say, Jake, you talk about the bombardment of the Gaza port. I can't tell you if that's exactly what we were hearing today, but one thing that is definitely the case, obviously, given the small distances that you're talking about. Here in Tel Aviv, you could hear the constant thudding, and you could actually feel it all the way through your body, through your core. You could hear the thudding of what we were told was Israeli bombardment of Gaza. Obviously, not able to tell you that's exactly what it was, but you can literally feel that in your body as those strikes are happening. So obviously all this comes in the context, as you said, of the fact that you've got 150 hostages and people still don't know their whereabouts, whether they're alive, whether they're dead, families in terror still waiting, people waiting for entire members of their families, and just still so many questions about that, Jake. And until there are answers on that, until they know what's going to happen there, it seems very uncertain that we will know exactly how Prime Minister Netanyahu will even deal with a possible ground invasion into Gaza.
And Aaron, we heard from President Biden a few hours ago. He pledged his unwavering support to Israel. How will that message go over there as the rockets keep firing?
Well, Jake, as you know, one of the first things when you talk to Israeli officials or even speaking to family members of hostages, and I know you've experienced this as well, they say thank you. They say thank you to the United States, and it is something we hear again and again. So that's certainly the attitude and the feeling. It is interesting when you look at President Biden's comments, of course, you notice, right, he talked about what Hamas did as sheer evil, pure, unadulterated evil, right? Those are words that are exactly the words you hear here. That is exactly what they want to hear. That is what they believe is happening, and he was very clear in how he described things. He was very clear, Karine Jean-Pierre, as you know later, saying, let's be clear, there are no two sides to this issue. So all of that, obviously, very important here. But also, Jake, just on the practical level, I know that there's a real push by the Biden administration to quickly rush in aid. But when you just look at the barrage of rockets that continually keep coming in here, it's not just a matter of whether they overwhelm, the Iron Dome in one onslaught, right? It's just the overall drawdown of what they do to Israeli capabilities, so that there is a need. They're very clear that there is a need, and it's, at least at this point, nothing but thanks to the United States for how the Biden administration is handling it.
All right, Aaron, thanks so much, and we'll look more for more of your reporting on Aaron Burnett Out Front tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern in just about 2 hours. Thanks so much. I want to go now to CNN's Nick Robertson, who's in Sderot in southern Israel, just a few miles from Gaza. And Nick, the UN is calling the latest developments in Israel, quote, bone-chilling. And truly, some of the stories we have heard as the IDF and others go into different parts of Israel and find the remains of Israelis, civilians of the Hamas terrorists slaughtered, are just so upsetting. Tell us more about what you're seeing and hearing.
Yeah, one of the reasons these stories have been slow to come out is because it's taken so long for the Israeli Defense Forces to fight and kill so many Hamas militants in some of these communities. In Hafa-Aza, where we were today, population usually about 700 civilians living there in a small community. 70 Hamas militants stormed into it. Some flew in, some on paragliders, some came in through the gates and started killing people. But it wasn't straightforward killing. It was binding people's hands and killing them. According to the general in charge there, he said that there was decapitations. We, to be frank, didn't see and weren't shown bodies of anyone decapitated. But this is what was described. And the point that he went on to make was, look, he said, when I got in here, and he's a retired general, 39-year veteran, he came out of his armchair, came out of retirement Saturday morning, bang, positioned himself as close as he could to support everyone in these communities. He said, when I got in and saw what happened, he said, I was reminded of what General Eisenhower said when he saw the death camps in World War II, and that was, get the journalists, which is exactly what the Israeli Defense Forces did today when they took us into Kafr-Aza to show what had happened there. That fight and the brutality that they described is something that I think is part of the reason why we're hearing the UN respond in this way. But don't listen to me, listen to the words of the general who was there and fought to take back control and what he saw.
And people run out with their children and they kill them. They kill babies in the front of their parents and then kill the parents. They kill parents and we found babies between the dogs and the family that killed before him. They cut head of the people. What I saw, hundreds of terrorists with full arms, full gear, with all the equipment and all the ability, make a massacre. Go from apartment to apartment, from room to room, and kill babies, mothers, fathers in their bedrooms. I heard during my childhood about the pogrom in Europe and the Holocaust, of course. All my family came from Europe and they are survivors, etc., etc. I never think that I would see in my eyes picture and things like this.
And this is why it's so shocking for a military veteran with so much experience to see things that makes him think of the atrocities of World War II. Tells you the level that this has gotten to, Jake.
All right, Nick Robertson, thank you so much. We're going to go back to Israel in a moment, but we also want to touch on a vital meeting happening right now among House Republicans. This is one day before the speakership vote. Remember, the U.S. government cannot really function without a Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Let's get right to CNN's Manu Raju on Capitol Hill. Manu, the dysfunction of House Republicans now has global ramifications. What is going on there right now?
Yeah, and the world, Republicans know the world is watching them, even as they're struggling to get behind a single candidate after the unprecedented ouster of the sitting Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, last week. And just right now, Steve Scalise, the House Majority Leader, and the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan walked in behind closed doors to meet with the full 221-member conference to make their pitch. We expect them to make their speeches tonight about why they deserve to be elected Speaker. Each man will have 5 minutes to make their case, and then they will open up to questions. Any member can ask any round of questions. It can go as long as possible, and then ultimately they'll close out for today. Tomorrow is the key day. That is the leadership election. Right now, under current conference rules, a majority of the conference, 112 members, is enough. 111 members is enough to nominate the next Speaker of the House, but there is a dispute and a debate, and something that Jim Jordan is pushing specifically to make sure that whoever gets the nomination actually can get 217 votes. Why? To avoid the long, drawn-out process on the House floor like we saw back in January when McCarthy went 15 rounds to be ultimately elected Speaker. But there's a problem with that, Jake. There is not consensus yet for either man. Both men recognize that they are going to fall short of 217 votes. So the process behind closed doors could last some time. And Jake, Kevin McCarthy himself, even as he is facing a push from some of his supporters to potentially run again, told his colleagues not to nominate him for the speakership in today's closed-door meeting. So we'll see ultimately how that plays out. But Jake, also some of the detractors, the people who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy, the 8 Republicans are here in the room. One of them, Congressman Matt Gaetz, said he had not yet made up his mind. Another one, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, walked in with the letter A on her shirt as she walked into closed doors. She was asked by her colleague Annie Grail what that was about. She said it was a scarlet letter. Jake.
Okay. That's not making me convinced that they have their act together. Manu Raju, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's get another live look at Gaza. A brief moment of calm, but explosions continue to go off, and the world needs to hear the stories coming from those stuck there, from those hearing the explosions over their homes, and stories from families waiting for any word that their loved ones are alive and coming home. You also need to hear from those suffering loss. The brother of my next guest was a peace activist. He was against what Netanyahu was doing. The terrorists found him hiding in a closet, and then they killed him. His story is next.
Okay, again, this is a status bar, this is a search bar. Let's know the difference, okay?
Social media. It can be overwhelming for a young homeowner turning into their parents.
Now, what does it mean to slide into someone's DMs? That sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay, we're not ready for that. As a team, we'll get there. It might be a fruit emoji, but that doesn't mean they're talking about fruit.
Progressive can't save you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money when you bundle home and auto with us.
Okay, do you really think we need 47 photos of fun dinner at Pam? Yes. No.
Upon his first day of retirement, Marcus Rogers made a contract with himself. I will never again work for another man or woman. Or Todd, especially Todd. I lay down my badge, abandon my corporate phone plan, and I'll get a new plan with Consumer Cellular, without a contract, without sacrificing coverage.
Let's go, birds.
When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
When you get approved with Drive Time, you get the real deal. It's the Drive Time Real Deal Maker.
I can't, I'm too excited. It lets you customize the real down payment and monthly payment of the car you want to buy.
That's super smart. I make the deal myself.
It's your car, you should make the deal you want.
And the deal you make on your phone is the deal you pay. It's that simple. You make the deal yourself.
Then just go to the dealership for a haggle-free purchase because you already made the deal yourself. Woo! Get the real deal at drivetime.com.
This isn't Charmin. No wonder I don't feel as clean.
Hurry up, Dad.
I'm trying. This cheap stuff is too thin.
Here's Charmin Ultra Strong.
Ah, my bottom's been saved. Woohoo!
With its diamond weave texture, Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better with fewer sheets and less effort.
What's everybody waiting for? This?
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
And for shower fresh clean feeling, try Charmin flushable wipes.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Being in debt was just such a challenge as a working single mom.
I was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to get out of debt by myself.
National Debt Relief negotiated with my creditors and reduced my debt by half.
National Debt Relief can significantly reduce the amount you owe.
National Debt Relief got me out of debt.
I feel like I'm in control again. I feel like I'm taking my life back now.
Call or visit nationaldebtrelief.com to get started.
ADT Self-Setup featuring Google Nest products. Now you can easily install your system that's backed by ADT's 24/7 monitoring with no long-term contracts. So you have a home with no worries. Brought to you by ADT.
I want to say that Sarah Vital has given me a new normal. Within, I'd say about 2 to 3 weeks, I already started to see changes.
I'm such a believer that it truly can change your quality of life.
You know, I don't expect to look 38 at 58, but I do want to feel great, and I want to look great.
Order now, because we're letting as many women as possible try Serovital for 90 days, absolutely risk-free. Go to tryserovital.com for your risk-free trial.
Closed captioning brought to you by mesobook.com.
We only represent mesothelioma victims and their families. Call for a free book.
Call 800-282-4444 or go to mesobook.com.
Parts of Gaza on fire earlier today. You can see the flames pouring out of this boat as the IDF continues to pound the territory with rockets as retaliation for the terrorist attack on Saturday. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus is the international spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces. He's with me right now. Thanks for joining us, sir. The IDF said earlier today that there were a number of launches from Syria aimed for Israel that fell in open areas. What can you tell us about this? Who is behind those attacks?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. The situation is that we are actually with active fighting on 3 fronts. The primary one is in Gaza, where there is still fighting ongoing. There are still attacks coming out of Gaza towards Israel. There was an attack in Ashkelon, in Kotel City in southern Israel. There was an attack just in a kibbutz called Mefalsim, also in southern Israel, in the Gaza envelope area. And we're still talking about an active combat zone in that area, not regarded to the whole aerial campaign that you just referred to, but things happening on the ground. We are deployed along our northern border in Lebanon, and there were skirmishes, and there has been the fire of a anti-tank missile by Hezbollah towards Israel. Yesterday there were attempts to infiltrate on the ground that were successfully thwarted, and the last front to become active is the Syrian front, where a few hours ago rockets were fired from Syrian sovereign soil towards Israel. As of now, I cannot confirm the identity of those firing. I cannot say if it was one of many Iranian proxies that are active in Syria. under Syrian approval, under Iranian control, or if it were Syrian forces or perhaps Hezbollah. That remains to be confirmed from an intelligence point of view, but this of course adds complexity to our situation. And to that, if I may, I'd add that there are also quite a lot of events ongoing in Judea and Samaria. We have had clashes between Palestinians and Israelis in various communities, and there have been attempts by armed terrorists coming out of Jenin in Judea, in Samaria, to attack Israeli troops. So a very, very dynamic environment where we are vigilant and defending ourselves on more than three fronts.
Let's talk about the individuals, the Palestinians in Gaza who are not part of Hamas and do not deserve to be hurt in these retaliatory strikes. On Saturday, when I asked you what they should do, you said that they should go to the shore or they should go to the south. I talked to a Palestinian-American woman in Gaza right now who said that that's not really possible. And she went to the border crossing, the only open border crossing in Gaza right now between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. And Israel, as you know, has been pummeling it with rockets all day. This even came up at the White House briefing today. Obviously, there are more than 2 million Palestinians that live in Gaza. And I'm sure you don't want to hurt the innocent ones. What are you doing to make sure that the innocent ones do not get hurt, and what can be done to provide access so they can leave Gaza?
Yeah, you're very right in a lot about what you're saying. A, we definitely do not want to hurt any non-combatants. B, it is an extremely complex situation. Gaza is extremely dense and by more than 2 million Palestinians. Sadly, the enemies that we're fighting are cowards, and they use civilian infrastructure in order to for their military purposes. And if you'll walk around the Gaza Strip, I don't think that you'll find even one sign on a building that says this is the Hamas headquarters for producing rockets or gathering intelligence. It simply doesn't exist, and they use all the civilian infrastructure for their military purposes. I mention this because the footage running on the screen is what looks like a civilian building, but in fact these are military targets used by Hamas for their military purposes, and as such they are qualified military targets. You asked what we do in order to minimize the risk for non-combatants. We do a lot. We are still in a stage, and we will continue to be in a stage where we abide by the law of international warfare, and we do not wish to harm the civilians. It is extremely unfortunate that they are caught in between Hamas and ourselves. Unfortunately, Hamas leaves us no other option. We're fighting to defend ourselves. Rockets are being fired at Israel as we speak. They've been fired at Israel throughout the day in southern Israel. And in order to mitigate that rocket fire and the ability of Hamas to fight, we fire at the military targets. We non-combatants and combatants. We still do warnings and roof knockings and other tactics in order to minimize the civilian casualties. I know and understand the complexity of the situation, but unfortunately, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad leave us with no choice.
Well, I would just say that you and your government and Egypt need to open up that border so innocent Palestinians can get out of Gaza. But that's all the time we have. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Karikas, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Moments ago, another explosion in Gaza. We have seen several since we've been on the air. More accounts from folks living in the region and living through this horror. That's next.
Introducing Finish Ultimate, engineered for the toughest conditions. Dry, burnt-on stains, old dishwashers, very hard water. New Finish Ultimate with cycle-sync technology helps deliver the ultimate clean.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way with Aveeno Daily Moisture. Formulated with nourishing prebiotic oat, it's clinically proven to moisturize dry skin for 24 hours. Aveeno.
I support Israel going after Hamas. I support Israel going after Hamas. They've done so much harm. They're so bad. They should go after them. Yes, I'm glad. Well, look out, people. Get out of their way. You can go ahead and take care of Hamas today. Short song. Well, that was a song by Paul Beckman, Paul the Rainbow Song, also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world. Created October 11th, 2023.